Alfredo, you're kind of in the hot seat right now.
Oh, snaps. I've made a terrible mistake.
No, you made a video today and it has
Yeah.
had quite the response.
Yes, I'm well aware. Feels good to have some motion again. You
Yeah.
know how the algorithms go where like when you're not in the favor and you're not posting enough or whatever, it throws you away. And
Hmm.
then once you make something salacious enough, I guess people will like tune in.
Yeah. How's the response been so far in your eyes?
um as a whole, because it is pretty cool with like AI now, it can give you a general summary of like what the sentiment is. Sentiment's pretty good. A lot of people, I don't think, truly ever click on videos. They just respond to the thumbnail,
Hmm.
which I understand that's what the purpose is. But then there's other people that are, infamous gatekeepers or old dudes that are still hanging on to like whatever it is that they believe their version of BMX is, which, hey man, everybody has the right to believe whatever they want.
Mm.
But don't come to my platform to just dissuade each individual commenter. Just stay in your lane, I'll stay in mine. Like we can do whatever.
Yeah. Has there been anything since this video's come out that you'd like, oh, I would definitely want to say this if, just like a follow up in any way?
I mean, just to address it, I made a video titled BMX is Dead. I've made like 4 of these over the last 3 years. This is the first time that it's gone on the radar this hard. Maybe because there is a chink in the armor or crack down the wall or something, but it's not a genuine, I'm so sorry. It's not a genuine like, oh, I have all the business insider that this is definitely happening. It's my
Hmm.
opinion as to what I think is going on, not just in BMX, like it's happening in skateboarding, it's happening in other sports. And there's just obviously a shift in everything in finances and the economy and like what people are drawn to nowadays. And it's almost like there's so much segmentation or segregation now that it's like people are probably doing this in their own little corners, and that's awesome. And they maybe not even be creating content around this, so I'm not aware. But it's just ebbs and flows of life in general.
Hmm. And it hit home for me seeing the response to all of this because I don't know if you would have seen my Instagram post last year, but what I did was took the Ride On beginning quote that Eddie Roman wrote at the beginning of Ride On that scrolled,
Yeah,
and I just retyped it and screenshot it and put it as the beginning of a post, knowing that everyone would read that and think that it was my words.
yeah,
And then I made it one of those carousels so that the next slide is the Ride On beginning with the scrolling thing.
right,
It was literally just meant to be like a social experiment of like,
yeah,
hey, you don't pay attention and you're going to get mad about this thinking that it's one thing, but then you're going to scroll and be like, oh, oops, I'm kind of dumb. And it reached every single sport that there is because there was people in like motorcycle, like that MotoGP type
right.
racing that were commenting on there. And it was crazy how much that blew up. But like, I think just like your video, my whole entire purpose was to know that there was going to be a heated response to it as a way to show people like your response means BMX isn't dead.
Right. So in a way, it's very meta. That's like a meta take you took on things, right?
Yes.
Um, do you believe in, and this might be a little philosophical or spiritual or stuff like that. Do you believe in the randomness, or do you think that things kind of lead you to a position of like your thoughts and things that guide you to a place of like, I'm going to make this piece of content today?
Oh man, we're gonna get into this already. Well,
We can go wherever
okay.
you want.
No, so in my personal feelings and everything, I feel like us and our brains are kind of like antennas,
Yeah.
and everything exists like somewhere else in that we pick up on these ideas and thoughts and things as
So
a
you subscribe to the idea that ideas are living.
kinda,
Yeah.
and with that it's like a frequency that you can tune into and out of and pay attention to, not pay attention to. But I also feel like you can get out of tune with that, and it doesn't necessarily like I don't know if I prescribe to everything being like a set path that is already exists, and that it's no matter what it was going to happen this way, as much as
Right.
it's like you have what's in front of you and you have the right path and you might get off of it but then if you can get back. It's not like you make one wrong decision when you're 12 and you end up like you're off the path forever with
Right.
that. So like, to answer your question, kind of, and is one of those things where I like synchronicities is the way I describe that.
Yeah. So for me, all of this came from like 3 random events in the last like couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
One of which was you reacting to the Trey Jones thing. Somebody sent me that, and I don't know why it struck a nerve. And I was like, well, that's his take on BMX. I'm just gonna, because obviously we know how the internet works. If we have a following, you understand like how to engage with what's going on in the
Mm-hmm.
ether. You take a pulse and you're like, all right, I'm gonna respond to this because obviously I know it's gonna get people talking. So I wrote up this little thing about what BMX meant to me, put it up, and it got shared by so many different variety of like BMX dudes, like from park riders, dirt jumpers, street riders, big name pros, little name people from around the world. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it wasn't, and look, I flew one time from Simple Session. I think it was like a 12-hour flight back to, I think it was, I flew to Florida, then back to LA. And I was on the flight with Trey. And he was cool, man. Like one-on-one, he's not a bad person, like at all. But sometimes when he's like in his BMX thing, it's like, well, if I don't fit what he thinks is a cool BMX rider, then he's probably not going to jive with me. And that's cool. Like I never got into this to make truth. Like I never rode BMX. I was like, that's going to make me friends. It was like, and this might be getting deep, but my dad passed away when I was 13. And the one thing that he and I did a lot was ride bikes with my brother, Man Cobra, for me to get conditioned to become a professional soccer player one day. So we rode bikes just as a means for me to become a pro. And I always told my dad, like, one day I'm going to be famous for soccer or whatever. And it didn't work out. And my dad passed away. And so I basically sunk everything I had into riding bikes. And instead of just using it as an exercise, I saw Dave Mirra on television do a double backflip in 1999 in San Francisco. And I saw that clip in my head and I was like, man, how cool would it be to one day be able to do a backflip on a bike and do all these things, right? And I manifested that. I trained at it and I became good at it. But it wasn't because I was like, this is going to get me friends. It's going to get me fame. It was just like something cool that I just resonated with.
Yeah.
And so ever since then, my goal has been like, okay, cool. Like I want to progress at whatever it is I'm doing. And so if my sponsors were like, hey, you need to get attention somehow. And I'm not as good as at the time when I was riding these Dew Tour contests, dude, Kevin Corrali, like who else? I mean, Scotty, Garrett, all these people were in my heat and they were so good. And I was like, man, I'm never going to be as good as those guys, but I can probably figure out a lane that's either creative or doing something different to pave my own little path. And I did that. And I've constantly reinvented myself for the simple joy of progression. Like in life, if you're not progressing, you're regressing. And I don't want to do that. And so all of this to say that like I wanted to let somebody else know that like, hey, you can do whatever you want. You can be whatever. You can be a park rider with brakes. You could be a street rider with no brakes. You can ride flatline. You can do whatever. And that was the coolest part about owning a bike shop in LA was I got to see every kind of person come in there and be so cool, so grateful that we were giving PMX a platform with our take of it, what it was. But we didn't really try to gatekeep like you and I have experienced in this realm, you know? So I guess that is a good little segue for everything else we're going to talk about. But that's just kind of my perspective on like BMX. It was never like, oh, this is going to make me $1 million. And even when I was making real good money from itself, I was always like, okay, well, I got to build businesses and I got to do all these other things because this is finite. I know that by my late 20s, my sponsors are already like, well, bro, you're getting up there, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that could bring me to talking about your video as well. In that, like, I think the major misconception that pisses so many people off with it is that today, when people talk about the BMX industry, they just say the word BMX. And I feel like your video is more of a focus on the industry of BMX than it is the activity of BMX that people do. And
Correct.
and so when people read BMX is dead, they read, oh, this thing that I love to do is dead, instead of like the real focus, which is the BMX industry, which like I can get why people would be mad and respond the way that they would about that, because we're all passionate about it. And I fully understand too, like that these kinds of videos that you made can bring a lot of traffic and attention. But I also realized like that attention in itself, the fact that that video has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments and thousands of views already, inherently in itself, that proves that BMX as an activity is far from dead.
And one thing I wanted to expound on that, and that's very astute, is that when I first started making YouTube videos, and this is a long time ago, because we were pretty early on, like trying to get into YouTube because we thought like, oh, this is like a cool place to just get your ideas across and whatnot. I knew that when we first started doing clickbait, that probably 10 years, which is literally where we're at now, 10, 15 years later, the clickbait would have to be so out there for people to care, right? And so it's just the name of the game. And there's nothing, if my video truly makes people quit riding bikes because of the title, number one, did you even watch the video? Because in the subject of the video, it's that old thing, don't judge the book by its cover. It's a way to get you there. Now I got you here. All right, give me 11 minutes of your time. Let me tell you like my perspective. It's YouTube. It's free. If you disagree, make your own perspective. Send it to me. I'll watch it with you. Like I'll react to it. Like I think it's cool. And the other aspect of it, like you said, it's going to get people talking. And if they're talking, then clearly it's not dead. But I have yet to truly see a BMX brand leave a comment that's like, no, bro, we're crushing it this year. We actually moved 2 pallets or 2 containers worth of bikes, because I do have insider information and I know that it's hard for everyone across the board, but that doesn't mean they're dying either. Even if they are in these holes, let's be real, credit cards, credit, stuff like that, they'll figure it out. You know what I mean? If they've been in the game this long, they're savvy enough to like get out of these holes. And it is unfortunate because what I did bring up in the video is true. People got greedy, or they just over ordered, or there was like more demand at one point and then less demand at another. Those things happen, right? But again, if my video or your video destroys BMX, then we have a bigger problem to talk about. And that's not what this was about. This was about, hey, look at me over here. I'm still alive. I don't know if I'm relevant, but I'm still making content. If somebody wants to check it out, here it is.
Exactly what you just said is what like sparked my response to be as like, I don't know, passionate as it was to the Trey Jones thing, because it was a thing of acting like what other people do, or is letting what other people do affect you so much that you put out this thing that acts like other people should be following like your perspective, talking about the Trey Jones thing. And I don't want to get too deep into that.
No. And I get what you're saying. Yeah.
So like, and then to keep going with your video, you made so many great points in there and brought up so many good topics and talked about so many good things that it's unfortunate that so many people get hung up on thinking that you talking about the industry in a very clear way within your video, like it is obvious you're not just talking about Bob who loves to go and ride at the local pump track when you're saying these things.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that people get caught up in that so much that they miss the messaging. But also at the same time, I do think that the one missing piece to the video was the follow-up of like, okay, BMX as an industry is struggling and feels like it's dead, but how can we fix it? And that's where this podcast comes in.
And that's awesome that you kind of piggybacked in a great way off of it, because it does let me. One thing I will say is that once you find a lane in content, you kind of have to stick to it. So let's say this kind of like talking head subject matter deep dive kind of thing is like going to be something I'm going to make in the future. Jumping on your podcast, I can kind of break that wall and talk about what I truly meant, what I truly embody with the concept for me for BMX, right? But also I learned this from being in Hollywood my whole life. In the entertainment world, your favorite songs are usually just short enough to where you're like, man, I want more of this. I don't like if I made that video an hour and I addressed every single thing, that might have been it. But now with a 12, 11-minute video, I have the room to like be like, okay, what do people really like? They want me to expound on this. And like you said, what can we do? And what are things that brands can do and stuff like that. And who knows? That might open the discussion to something else. Great. But I think ultimately it's like what I first prefaced this whole thing is like those ideas also stem from like me taking inspiration from other content I watch. And just last night, because I had planned this video for a while now, it's been like over a month.
Mm-hmm.
I just needed something to kick me out of like this stump I was in. And I was like, because I was very not insecure, but just kind of feeling like, okay, I know people are going to come for me. So, you know, that feeling when you post a piece of content, it's almost like sending a questionable text to a girl or a guy, whatever you're into, where you hit send, you're like, oh, how's this going to go? And I knew like insider baseball, when you post a video and it's number one, you already know like, okay, cool. Like this video is going to pop off. And then when you start seeing the comments rolling in and then you see people and brands or whatever it is that you know don't usually watch your stuff, it's like, okay, it's triggered. Good.
Mm-hmm.
So I was watching this thing with Aaron Rodgers, pro football player, and he's been getting really deep into the spiritual aspect and just being a critical thinker. And that's something that so many people lack now in all aspects of life and everything. They don't ask enough questions and they let media, a thumbnail, a title, whatever, dictate what they're thinking already. And that's another thing that I wanted to present in this video is like, think deeper. Like in reality, if there is a brand in my comments or a gatekeeper that's like feeling a type of way of my comment, that says a lot more about them than me. It's like they're giving me their cards. I made an essay about my life, my perspective, my things. Why is it bothering you so much? So there's something I struck, some nerve, or you really just need to get something off your chest from something, some past uh, moment that you and I might have shared. But either way, for everybody else, it's first. I got some cool DMs. Not like it's funny when people support you so much that they're like, I want to send you this DM. And I was like, no, just keep commenting there because it helps with the or whatever. Sure, send me a DM. And one of the comments was pretty funny. He said, hey Alf, your video when I first hit play, it made me think. And then I watched it. And then it really made me think. Bro, that to me, that one comment was like, cool. I'm glad I made the video. Because that made someone think like, okay, first off, the book and the cover, not the same. And then also like he brings up some interesting points. Those are my points. You can have as many other points and you can bring them. And if again, like this wasn't me trying to kill BMX, was it? It was me being like, hey, this is what I noticed. Cool. You have a different take on it. Cool. That might be good in Chile, in Germany, in Nova Scotia. But here where I'm at currently, anytime I go to the skate park, it is empty. And I'm not talking about bike empty. I'm talking about skateboard, inline, scooter, anything. And the few kids that are riding, they are e-bikes or wheelie kids. And they come up to me and they chat and they're like, bro, I've seen some of your videos. And it's cool that like, because we've made so much content over the years that even people that are outside of BMX get to watch it and be like, let me get some inspiration from this guy and like, or these tricks or whatever it is. But that I'm seeing that. I go back to Cali, I go ride with some friends. Bro, all the spots we used to go to either are gone, annihilated, or whatever, or nobody's there doing it. Again, that doesn't mean BMX isn't alive. It's just not what it was 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you know? And I think these type of videos, these discussions, the things that you're doing with your channel, the thing with a few other people, Billy Perry, Nigel, there are people that are doing it. And for the right reasons. Like, dude, I don't think in the last 5 years, anyone has done as much for BMX as Nigel Sylvester. Like, I got to give that dude his flowers. Same thing with Billy, Adam Elzina's way, you. There's other smaller creators that are coming up that are doing cool stuff. But then you have the old guard that's like, man, those corny YouTubers or this or that. And they're talking from YouTube, from their platforms, whatever. But it's like, all right, cool. Like, I'm here to watch your content. I'll listen to it. I might not even respond to you in my comments or in yours, but I'm aware.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the saddest thing about when that happens is that like when it's in response to something that I personally do is that with everything I'm trying to do, I'm just trying to celebrate the cool stuff in
Yeah.
BMX and celebrate people that are doing rad things. And when you're doing that and you have, yeah, I don't want to go crazy with that kind of
Yeah.
stuff because we could very easily, but you're right. Everything you're saying, fully with
And I
you.
want to also give you your flowers because, you know, you're in a completely different part of the world or of the US than where I grew up. And so you have a completely different style as to everything. And it is cool because like you dress and ride like I wanted to when I was watching the props videos and listening to
Mm-hmm.
the same music that you probably listen to. I just evolved differently because that's what the culture in Southern California changed me. And we got into tattoos and all sorts of stuff, whatever. But dude, that like when I first saw you popping off, I was like, damn, that's cool, man. Like he could do some long ice picks. Like he gets creative. He
Yeah.
does cool stuff, you know, like it's all dope. It's all cool and celebrated. And the other aspect that I was going to bring up about you is like you have a lot of endemic sponsors, which that means that people in the industry are down with what you're doing, which
Mm-hmm.
is awesome, right? And I saw some comments that people left me. They're like, "Bro, you're doing this for money, or you're just mad that BMX doesn't pay you anymore, or all these other things." And it's like there's so many ideas swirling around that people are just like plucking at midair and being like, "This is you. This is what." And it's not the case. Like you are making content and you have brands that in BMX that pay you. I do other stuff, but if I do drop a video and I have a paid sponsor, they're non-endemic. There are
Mm-hmm.
these other brands that are like, hey, we like this other video you make. Can you make one like this? And for all intents and purposes, yes, that does also bring income. And I do have a baby, so I have to, you know, make that stuff. But two things can be true. I can make money and make content and make cool things that I think are cool, and I hope people like them. But that doesn't take from anybody else. In BMX, it is different. If you're a 39-year-old BMX pro and you're still holding on to that life, that's awesome. Like I respect you for sure. But that also kind of means that there's a 17-year-old dude, 18-year-old dude that at some point wants to get that torch. And it is that battle. And unfortunately, because of the situation, there isn't as much money to go around. And so it is that weird place. And that person that might have gotten that $300 to then be like, all right, cool. There is a little bit of money in there. And it gives me that extra motivation to want to ride. They might not get that anymore. And they might not pursue it as hard, you know? And that's something that we can talk about a little bit later that myself and Caleb Quambeck and a couple brands are working on that. There's people within BMX that we think can transcend BMX and do other things. And we have some brands that are outside of BMX that think BMX is awesome and want to support it in a different way. And we're trying to bridge that gap and help them make some income. Dude, you're not going to get rich off BMX, but if we can help you sustain your life and ride longer and hopefully maybe grow out of BMX, also ride BMX, but do other things that can help put money in your pocket, that's awesome. And that to me is the whole synergy of BMX anyways. It's like helping that community by giving your insight, by giving your connections, whatever.
Yeah, and for the longest time, it wasn't cool or okay to go for those non-endemic sponsors or even to have a YouTube channel. And I think for the longest time, people just didn't realize if you have a YouTube channel and that's your main source of income because you're successful on there, you're making your money from Google, not from
Correct.
people buying bike parts and then
Right.
a sponsor paying you. So you're not even taking from the BMX industry in that way. And the same applies with any non-endemic sponsor that you have. And for BMX as a whole, I guess we can never say as a whole, but for
Right.
the mainstream of BMX, like culture who are in the industry and prevalent within there, to like shun that is so counterproductive because you should be like celebrating that as like, hell yeah, you're helping bring money in to support yourself from outside of the BMX industry. So you're less reliant on that BMX industry.
Correct. And to piggyback on that, there's an account named Jimmy the Giant. He's got 700,000 followers. And he made a video 4 years ago
I
saying
remember
that
it.
BMX is dying quietly that has 400,000 views, right? So we let somebody outside of BMX make a video about it. And it was pretty poignant. And he had some good points as well. So why can't a BMX rider do it? Like, who is anyone within BMX to come outside of their bubble to go into your platform and be like, bro, you can't do this. I'm going to tell you what you should and shouldn't say.
Yeah.
Well, probably because they've been doing that their whole career.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so to somewhat reel it back into the video and sort of keep it on a topic with that, like to go back to what I was saying before about the distinction between BMX as an activity and BMX as an industry, I feel like no one who is saying BMX is dead is fully just talking about like the activity as much as they are the industry of it. And there's so much evidence out there that the activity of BMX is okay. Like there's more access to BMX right now than there ever has been, and it's all for free. And I think that's part of why in some places you don't see people in certain areas, because there's so many places for people to go that they're spread out. And yes, there's definitely areas like what you're saying where there's just nobody doing it at all anymore. But if you pull it as like a whole, I feel like there's still a ton of people doing it. Then riding itself is at the highest level it's ever been.
Oh yeah, yeah.
By far. The bikes are the best that they've ever been.
Yes, too good. If anything, the lack of planned obsolescence has kind of cornered them, because it's like the bikes are too good.
Yeah. And then there's so many events going on in Ohio. Even just in Ohio, last summer, I had to pick between certain events, all that were happening like on the same weekend in this state of Ohio. And
that's amazing. Yeah.
Right.
But
And
BMX has always been pretty good in the Midwest. I mean, for me, there was a point where all of props was basically on the East Coast. Like there was very little that ever happened. I remember one time I freaked out because was it Megatour? Megatour came by Etnies, and I got to meet Aaron Ross, and I was just like so starstruck. But it was like somebody from Texas by way of like an East Coast trip, you know? So
yeah. But just like, I'm just for this first part of that, you know, leaning into like why BMX is alive. And some people would say it's the best that it's ever been because of those things, in that the access, the quality of the bikes, and all these other things. And that argument you could make that argument. On the flip side, like BMX as an industry there's no denying. I don't think anyone out there could try and say that BMX as an industry isn't at an extreme low point right now.
Correct.
There's no way. And you went over all of the reasons why in your video. And I think you were spot on with so much of it, if not all of it. You know, companies are struggling, all the things you mentioned. You hear about riders' pay being cut, and we see people, and we're about to see, with the time of year we're in, we're about to see some like shakeups in the industry in terms of riders that are potentially going to affect like the entire thing. And then the amount of competition for attention that exists out there, you could apply that to BMX as an activity, and and it's all the stuff that you talked about in your video that is fully valid. And so I wanted to talk about that side of things a little bit as like the setup, because everything we've talked about and everything in your video kind of sets the stage for then the follow-up question of like, all right, well, what do we do about it?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. And so to expound a little bit too, like I said, I've had different levels of insight into the industry, because as a bike shop owner, as a professional BMX rider, as someone that's designed parts, like, and actually tested the design parts, like move things around. The only thing I didn't do was actually physically weld them. And it would have been interesting to try and learn that stuff. So like shout outs to Mike Laird and dudes like that are like genuine hands-on fabricators. As someone that sponsored riders, as someone that had clothing brands and a media website, a huge one at that with the come up. I'm speaking on things that like for the last 10 or 15 years, I know about. Do I know exact bike sales numbers? I don't think anyone in BMX truly does. Do I know some stuff from my conversations, maybe with Sabrosa or, you know, different other brands? Of course. But again, this is all from a 30,000 foot view, not microeconomics of the action sports. Because again, like the economy itself is so complex, and how little things across the world affect us, right? In such a niche sport that dude, sometimes like some of the invoices that I would get sent from certain brands might be off, like little things like that. So, like I said, and what you mentioned as well, like I wanted to touch on a bunch of stuff that kind of like led us to today. And that was video one. Video two and three, we're kind of going to maybe expound a little bit more. And like, this is great that we can kind of like bounce ideas, which this will probably affect those next videos.
Mm-hmm.
But what can we do? Well, for someone like you that you do work with some of these brands, like you're on Fit, right? Or is it S&M?
Both.
Both. Okay. So you have Moeller, probably one of the best dudes when it comes to like having his finger on the pulse, manufacturing in America, and all this other stuff. So you have a direct connection with someone that you can affect jams, you can affect new riders that are getting put on, you can affect different things like that.
Yep.
I still have the ear of a lot of people that do move the things in BMX. I do have a lot of friends that make a lot of content within BMX. And I also own some businesses that have some touches in BMX that this year I do plan on activating and having more meetups, rides, a little contest, things like that. So that's one aspect. Number two, again, this conversation, like there's going to be so many people at home that are having a good conversation or a bad conversation, but guess what? They're talking. Somebody mentioned in the comments that I read earlier that were like, people can go out and film a bunch of dope video parts right now, but that might not truly change much.
Yeah.
It might keep them paid for a little longer and do all these other things, which is awesome because I do love watching a good web video, but that might not change stuff as much as like people noticing like, yeah, man, like I really haven't ridden as much as I used to. I haven't really hit up my friends. I haven't really put together like a drive or a little like, dude, road trip. Like people don't do road trips like they used to, right? And that's what's funny is like nowadays with social media, I feel like it's so much easier to spark people to do stuff because I'll notice that if I go to the skate park 3 or 4 days in a row and I post 3 or 4 stories in a row, I'll get responses right away that's like, yo, bro, you made me pick up my bike. You made me do this, right? And so all that to me is positive, right? Where, of course, in that first video, I didn't have enough time to talk about it. It is the point of like just bringing back old stuff, old things that we all used to do that synergistically created more momentum. I even saw some skateboarders telling me like, hey man, like I don't even ride, but like I have noticed there's less people at the parks or whatever. So I'm stoked to see when BMX comes back again. Cause let's be real, it's a bicycle. It's cyclical. It's going to come back.
Yep. And most of the things that we've talked about, like within your video and already through this, are things that can't be changed or controlled by any one person or even like our industry as a whole. It would take everyone starting to move a certain way to really impact most of the things that we've been talking about right now. And so where my mind goes with it, and I love everything you're talking about, I think we're going to probably hit on all of that in a detailed way and kind of how I wanted to approach this. Where my mind goes with it is to try and think of the things that BMX as an industry does have control over that could help BMX as an industry. Because somebody said this recently in my life, and it's going to stick with me forever. The worst thing for BMX is BMX. And that's a good point. It's so true. And I'm really curious. I have a couple questions for you because I want to hear where your mind is with this. What comes to your mind when I ask you what marketing would you say there is within BMX?
So the actual riding part of BMX in totality is marketing. Like if you think about it this way, a bike manufacturer or a brand, because let's be real, very few bike brands are manufacturers. Like there's only like probably a couple. So a bike brand that gets their bikes imported from China, that's really the demystification of it. The whole riding aspect in itself is a marketing exercise. So instead of taking out billboards for $5,000 a pop for 12 months, they're like, let's just grab 60K and divide it into how many bikes we're going to give away, how many trips we're going to do, and how much we can pay 8 riders for. Right.
Yeah.
And so when you look at it from that perspective, and let's talk about numbers from like again, let's say 2015, 10 years ago, a top BMX street rider could be earning, let's say 2K a month, maybe a little bit more. Let's just say 2,500, whatever that is. And let's say you have 10 of those dudes, right? So that's a substantial amount for a small BMX brand. And let's say they're making like a couple $1 million in gross sales, but after you net it all out and you bring it all down to like bikes are heavy to ship and all sort of stuff, you know, like those numbers seem big, but in reality, in the grand scheme of like the world, they're not big numbers. But doing the web videos, doing the road trips, the mega tour, the road fools, all the different things that people did that was exciting. They got us to feel something, right? A brand is storytelling. A brand is makes you emote, right?
Yeah.
And so at that time, when we were real peak into BMX, let's just say it was road fools. And so you got the 12 best guys in one bus going for, what was it, 10 days, going to all these cool spots and just killing it. One of the best aspects of it wasn't even so much the riding. It was all the inside jokes, all the stuff, like the music, all these other things, right? And so I don't know if at a certain point, maybe there was like that changing of the guard of what was popular, what was going to transcend it and whatever. And so people stopped doing the trips as much, but they just gave you the finished product. And you started getting those web parts that were amazing. And then you started getting the web parts that had 2 songs in it that, you know, like Dakota probably pioneered and was like, you know, 8 minutes of just mind melting BMX riding, you know, and that set the bar so high so that other dudes were like, oh, bro, I'm gonna have to film for another like 2 years or whatnot. But and then it became so many dope riders in America doing that. And then it became international, all these other dope riders doing it. And then it just became like competition of just the elite clash. And then dudes came in that were different, that like had a different scope on things, like Carl Pointer, Bruce Chrisman, Eric Elstrand, Tate Ross Kelly, all these other riders that like did creative things. And then that's when it kind of started becoming more of the quote unquote influencer, or dudes that were like transcending BMX, getting all these big views and doing all sort of stuff. And then that's where I think BMX lost the bus, like where they had these riders they were dealing with, or they could deal with them, but they were like, nah, man, he's not true BMX. He's something different. I don't know what that is, but like, nah, we're not going to put him on because like it might mess up the flow of like what we're doing with these other riders or whatever. And so my big roundabout answer is, I think it just didn't truly evolve in the way that like how I envisioned it when I used to talk to like certain brands about like working with Adam LZ, or, you know, I helped them get on Stranger at the time. I looked at it as originally the bike brand was the platform that gave you the spotlight, and then the brand supported you to do all these cool things.
Yeah.
I think there was a change of the guard where it became the rider had the platform. They got the parts, and the spotlight came back to the brand because they like collabed on parts that they thought their fan base would like. And then that person had their own content that they, you know, promoted your products organically or however. And then if they really wanted to, they would film that web video as well and go on trips and stuff like that. But sometimes you would see like the Anthony Panzas or the Billy Perrys or the LZs that like they can go and make those amazing video parts, and it might still get a fraction of a vlog of them BSing in their backyard. And like, again, going back to the kind of like what I've said about road fools, like sometimes it's more about the behind the scenes, like you feeling like you're part of that vlog or that video or that road trip or whatever. So I don't know if I fully addressed it. It was kind of like a big old.
I'm going to change the way I asked the question, but you said a lot of really good stuff that we're also going to end up like going through too. Cool. So to make it a little bit more specific of a question, if you think about 2026 BMX brand, what types of things is a brand doing for marketing in 2026? Like base level things would you list off that they're doing for marketing?
I mean, they post clips on Instagram of their rider, but oftentimes it's sometimes I view it as lazy because it's not even like a unique clip. They might be reposting it or whatnot. Okay. Or they have carousels with the product and you know, more information on it. I guess sometimes like it might a simpler answer might suffice, but I do geek out on this stuff. So I'm like, oh man, like I see when a brand posts a single picture of a part and I'm like, oh, that's the worst thing you can do. Like make a carousel or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. I'm kind of
But
looking for a list here. So
okay,
so Instagram posts is one.
Instagram post, um, they'll have some sort of rider mix or like a small road trip they did. I'm thinking honestly because I work with Sabrosa and stuff, so like they just had a really badass like
Yep.
European trip that they did.
So
So that hits. What's that?
trip video.
Yep, trip video.
Okay.
Then they had clips, individual clips or alternate angles of the clips that were part of that trip video. And then they probably had releases of the new parts and maybe colorways.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're probably announcing one of their, they just had the rail jam. So that was like a little mini contest that was good interaction where they got like people to put the rail somewhere and do creative things. So to me, that's a good example of a brand that's doing something great. Odyssey just had a jam where I think it was Brad Silva built like that gigantic hubba going down.
Oh,
like,
Darty, yeah.
Yeah, that was super sick. Then there was the jam where they built in that DIY spot in Southern California. That was more like rider led, where brands plugged into that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's all marketing. That's all getting people to take note of parts.
Yep. So
events.
So we're at videos, jams, social media posts, and what's kind of sad about this is it's hard to think of what happens for marketing in BMX. Now, my next question, who's this stuff for? Who's the videos for? Who's the jams for? Mm-hmm. Who's the Instagram posts? Who's that for?
So ultimately it is for the consumer, for someone to be like, oh man, that shadow chain sure does look nice and red. My shadow chain is pretty dope, but it's black or it's rusty or whatever. Like maybe it is time I upgrade it. It's almost like that quid pro quo. Like, okay, cool. You made some content that made me feel something. Like, let me go and support you by buying a chain or some pedals.
Mm-hmm.
But some of it sometimes feel like it is like one thing I heard that was interesting a long time ago is like fashion for men. When you like designer clothes or things like that, you're really not even doing it to get girls. You're doing it to show off to other men.
Right.
And so a little bit of it is like that, where it's like all the pros are kind of showing out to each other, like how dope or the newest variations of what they're doing until a Garrett clip drops. And then everyone's like, oh man, I'm 10 years behind Garrett. Like just mind melting stuff that he does, or Dennis or Chad or those guys. But in like the simplicity form or the simplest form, so for the consumer,
which is
but that is interesting to think about, because if you look at when you post something, how much of the viewership is a true consumer? Like how many BMX riders are watching that and being like, I'm going to buy a BMX part? How many is it like fixie riders or e-bike riders or a lay person that has no idea about BMX and they're watching it? So it is kind of like a out to the ether, and whoever picks up on it and they watch it. So it is interesting to think about convergence, how many people are actually going to end up.
Yeah. And so I'm starting a funnel here.
Yeah.
And so when you boil it down, all of those things and who that consumer is are the people who ride bikes, people who ride BMX. Now, if a huge part of bike companies being bike companies and selling bikes, if their marketing that they do is almost fully intended for people who already ride BMX, they are, if they're a big chunk of their sales is trying to sell complete bikes, their marketing is focused towards people who already have a bike.
So cannibalizing kind of.
So you're trying to sell to someone who's not going to buy your bike. Yeah. It's great for parts and people who need it, but I think what we see right now is a perfect example of supply and demand, in that we are seeing firsthand that the amount of people who need parts for their bikes is not enough people to sustain the amount of companies that exist that are making parts, because the supply of parts and things that are available is greater than the demand of people who are buying them. If it was flip-flopped, then we wouldn't see a struggling BMX industry. And if all of the marketing that we see is made for the people who ride and are already in this industry, then that means you are trying to pull from this finite group of people to buy your stuff. And if you're trying to sell complete bikes to those people, well, they're not going to buy them unless it's a very, very fringe group of people who are going to buy those.
Right.
And so what happens in the scenario where the supply is greater than the demand? The supply gets cut.
Right.
And if we're talking about supply in BMX being that there's an overabundance of parts and companies selling parts, well, then naturally that means things are going to get scaled backwards. We might see companies go away. We might see like major scaling back, which I think is lucky in BMX that's possible. Like, we'll see people lose their jobs, but I think for a lot of companies, they could scale back without fully going away. And I'm not saying that this is what needs to happen. This is like your observation. Like, this has been my observation in talking with, like, I feel like there's so many people on the internet who see what I do and have no idea that I'm connected to almost every single brand and every single brand owner and bike shops and every mail order, not every mail order, but most mail orders. And like, I've like somehow found myself to be this middleman between the average guy who goes and loves to ride and the industry of BMX. So I've seen all this stuff, and then somehow I've developed these business senses that I can pick up on some of these things like what I'm talking about right now.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not blaming companies for what I'm saying, because like everything that I'm saying, if it makes sense and if it's accurate, it had to have had some type of cause and something led to this. I'm not trying to blame companies or anyone at these companies, but I do think that this is what naturally happens when you have non-marketing, non-business, like formally educated people or people who've like really, focused and learned the fundamentals of how these things work, running and having to do those things.
Right.
And like, once again, not blaming anyone, because everyone at a company wants the company to do good. Like no one at a company is working at it like, I'm going to sabotage because I want them to do bad. Like, it's just also really hard to think outside of that box of what has always been and always worked when you're also trying to make sure that the box continues to exist.
Yeah.
Does the things I'm saying make sense?
100%. It is a very nuanced thing to pick apart, and especially if like you said, because have you ever had a job within BMX? Did you ever work like at a mail order or anything like that, or the distributor?
No.
Okay.
I've just worked very closely and just talked to people about all of this stuff so much.
And so for us, like with the bike shop in downtown LA, I got to see like, and I don't know if I even talk about this a lot publicly, but so my brother and I are in the car space. My brother builds twin turbo Lamborghinis. And so obviously this is like a completely different world than what BMX is, right? So you can imagine. And so we have a business that we do there, and the concepts are not that different from what BMX does,
exactly the same.
Right. But the dollar amounts, the way that they run it, the efficiency, the forecasting, all that other stuff is light years away. So you're totally right. But a microcosm of, or kind of like when we focus in on BMX and like when I had the shop, there are some parallels of the bike and the car world. When you buy a brand new Toyota, BMW, whatever it is, those cars, the manufacturer doesn't make a killing on. Where they get their killing is on the service and on you buying aftermarket components or having to replace parts that break. That's where the money's at. BMX is the same. BMX completes, I would buy them for $210 and I would sell them for $350 or $320. Somebody would do a blowout sale and I had to drop the price or whatever. So in reality, you're selling this $300 bike and you're making 60, 70, 80 bucks, right? But that's the gateway drug. That kid's going to go ride. He's going to probably at a certain point realize that the handlebar is a little small or whatever it is, right? And the brands knew that, so they would have the planned obsolescence of like, okay, this hub was dope 5 years ago, but now it comes on a complete instead of being an aftermarket. Now it's a complete product. So eventually they're going to probably want to upgrade to something lighter, newer, whatever. However, BMX has always felt like a race to the bottom. It's always felt, and that's something that people probably don't even know about, that back in the day when I was like 18 or 19, 18 turning 19, Fu from Epic BMX and I had an online business. I helped him build out his web store because I've always been good at like websites, coding, and stuff like that. And I've always been very organized, and I've always used spreadsheets. And so we started an eBay store. And Fu in the past was killing it on eBay. But when we joined forces, we were doing real good. Like we started making six figures off this online store probably within 3 months. Like it was very quick. And for someone that I was in college, so I was getting to apply some things from school straight into my online business and vice versa. I would have in my classes things that I would bring from my online business and be like, oh, hey, like I'm actually watching this happen. Like I learned a lot about arbitrage and just kind of like buying parts in the US to then sell to Mexico or Europe or whatever, because they didn't have the access or it was so expensive out there to buy it. And the price to buy it in America plus shipping was still significantly cheaper, right? And so I learned a lot from Fu, especially because Fu is like an old school, like Vietnamese, like former refined gangster. So like he would literally buy out the entire stock of like this is a very like apt example, but Odyssey had made Twan bolts and they picked like this lavender color and this purple color that they got stuck with. And
Yeah.
so Fu and I went and like we jazz code, like we put paint stripper on all these cranks. We got them all raw. And then we had raw some of them, and then some of them we actually powder coated. But bro, we would get them for like $40, $35, and we would sell them on eBay for like 150.
Yeah.
So Fu and I would make our split, and it was great. But eventually brands are like, why are we selling so much to these guys? Why don't we just sell direct? Why don't we do this stuff? So BMX is always kind of like you said, BMX has always been its own enemy. It's like cannibalizing its own dealers, because what happens if you're, as an example, Odyssey, and you have a backyard sale? Well, guess what? There's 5 shops that are probably supporting you in that area. And now instead of kids going to those shops, they go straight to Odyssey. They buy it from them, which look, I get it. You have to move product and you have to do certain things, but I do like the models where when somebody sells direct, they sell more expensive than if you were to buy from the bike shop. Because then if somebody really wants to buy it from you, well, guess what? You're making more money and you're not pissing off your vendor or your retailer. But yeah, with Fu, I learned so much about all that stuff. And then, like I said, the aftermarket components. So guess what? Most of those products should be signature products. So prime example, like when I was on Demolition, I was on Volume and Demolition, and I had a Volume signature bar called the Cougar Bar. And, Cougar Bar, I was always into girls and I was always into like the marketing aspect. I made the bars 8.69 inches tall. Like, I had these little marketing ploys that I thought were funny or whatever.
Yeah.
Then I was working on a Volume frame that had the same colorway as this BMW M3 that I had bought, which is Laguna Seca. And it was actually, I came up with the concept of the Bermuda because number one, it was going to be a 3-way collab. It was my frame, my geometry, but then Pat Casey, RIP, who was like 13 or 14, something like that, already super badass, was going to get a colorway. And then Brock Rayford was going to get the other colorway. And so we were going to, each colorway got their royalties or whatnot. But right there is an example of marketing. It's like, okay, you got 3 riders you like. Volume was smart. Instead of having 3 different frames, 3 different sizes, 3 different, all these other things, they were like, let's just make one frame. You guys all get a colorway. And if somebody's like, dude, Pat Casey's so dope at ramps, I'm going to buy his. Brock is so good at street, I'm going to buy his. And I like whatever Alfredo does, I'm going to buy his.
Yeah.
Beautiful. That's like right there, supply and demand, marketing, all that stuff.
Yep.
I think all parts should be signature. The problem is that some of the parts for sure have a mold fee. So if you're, again, this is all super insider baseball, but if you're going to buy a tire, you have to buy a mold. That mold costs about 10 grand. So in your mind, you have to be like, okay, 10 grand, let's say at the time, $30 tires. So I have to sell 3,000 units to, right? No, well, because true cost is like, let's say $6, $5, whatever. Let's say you have to sell, 1,000 units, whatever that number is, to break even. Then after that, for the next 5 to 10 years, hopefully that rider stays on your team and you can sell out of these tires, right?
Yeah.
And then you can make a profit, whatever. The problem was that again, like there was like problems. They would make a signature crank for somebody. The crank was amazing, but then 2 years later, that person left the team. Now they got stuck with the product, so now they're gonna have that backyard sale. Fu would come in and be like, "I'll buy all those cranks," like then we'll sell them
Yep.
online. So that was like I might have gotten too deep, but that was like an example of like again some BMX marketing and then some BMX cannibalization. They were like, "Oh man, like that's not gonna work. We're gonna have to do it direct. We're gonna have to forget the mom and pop shops and stuff like that." Which is one thing that I actually didn't really talk about in my video was that the death of the bike shop. That's like another big problem for
Yep.
BMX. Yeah.
Absolutely is a huge thing. And there's so many factors to it. And when I think about all those factors, I that could be its own podcast in itself. That's kind of what I did with Fu a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I think to bring my point that I was talking about all these things previously with marketing and supply and demand and all that. So I have a way to bring this full circle because I think that is a huge thing that's lacking in BMX, especially talking about the marketing side of things, is really thinking all the way around with these things. And so my whole point by bringing up supply and demand is that you can't grow BMX just by sustaining the people who currently do it. And so if your marketing is 100% or even just primarily focused for the people who currently do it, and you're not actively trying to do things that bring new people in, well, we're currently seeing what happens when you do that, and that it's not sustainable because there's not enough people buying things to support the amount of companies that are selling things. The supply is too high for the demand that exists with the current like sphere that is everyone who rides BMX, buys parts and everything. And so you have to have more people for growth to exist. I would even argue that you could make the argument that you almost need more people coming in just to sustain, because not everybody is buying things with frequency and there is a base level. And so,
well, one thing I'll interject there. If we're looking at a bike brand, right? So let's say as an example, we're like you ride for Fit and S&M, right?
okay.
And so Fit and S&M has an interesting balance because they have like American made goods and they have overseas product and they make a wide range of bikes and parts, right? And I think they have ventured in the past. I don't know what they're doing currently with other kind of bikes, sometimes like cruisers and different things like that, right? I ride for Sabrosa and Shadow, and I think out of any brand, they've done such a good job of trying to slowly make other parts so that they don't have to fully rely on a BMX rider to buy it.
Yeah.
Demolition back in the day did a really good job where they basically created the volume cutter and parts for fixed gears. And that's when they were doing the best, when they were, I would say, killing it in BMX, but also killing it in another area and bringing money that way. Then there's a bigger brands, let's say like the Specialized or the Mongoose, which like they're outside of the realm of like true core BMX, but they make so much money from all these other things that they can basically throw money at BMX and not even sweat it, right? There's different levels of bikes and bike brands. When you look at a brand like, let's say Tree, which I always thought was super sick, they make really cool product. It's so hard probably for them to sustain because like, let's say they do have a dope rider. Like I think like, let's say Clint Reynolds was at the time, he was riding for Tree. And at a certain point, he's going to get swooped up by a bigger brand that has a bigger budget. And even if the product is really good, at a certain point, the economies of or the micro economies in BMX are like, well, he's great and he's promoting these products, but we can do a better job of like letting him travel the world or do things like that, right? And so sometimes like there is those problems where those little brands that don't have enough to offer, they can sustain, but they can't compete with the brands that have the entire product offering, the safety gear, the pads, all these other things. So that is an astute point of like trying to sell the same product to the same 10 people. Sometimes maybe it is time for like, and Odyssey's doing a good job too. Like they have the bike bags and I use the Odyssey bike bag. They're making other products that can leave BMX or BMXers that are, let's say more casuals. They're not true like BMX like enthusiasts. They're just kind of like, I have a BMX. Sometimes I'll take it with me.
And so everything you're saying is a perfect example of the point that I'm driving to with all of this, is that BMX as an industry needs to focus at least a little attention on reaching people who don't already ride BMX bikes and doing the mountain bike parts like Odyssey's doing. Perfect example of that. Making padding and bike bags and things. Those are all perfect examples of that. And the tree example is a great one. And there's other more niche, smaller things that I think are perfect examples of when this happens in BMX, and it has happened successfully in the past, and BMX does better. It's easier to sustain those smaller brands without them having to go out of their lane and like, oh yeah, we're going to see this small brand that's 100% known for making the sickest cranks ever try to make like a bike bag. That doesn't make any sense. And I think in those times of BMX doing better and the things being more balanced than right now being just a competition for all of the same people, it makes more sense in that. And so, yeah, my whole entire point with everything I was saying is that I think in order for BMX to sustain and grow, at least some attention needs to be shifted from primary marketing being for people who already ride BMX specifically, and making products and having marketing that is somewhat overlapping in other areas. And I know that opens a whole nother can of worms because it's not easy to do that. And my next point is like, I don't know the answer to how to do that. I just recognize that that is kind of what seems to be the core like problem at the root of these things.
I agree. And it is one thing I heard in BMX like a long time ago, because there was a point like you that I would call around and there was like big bike brand owners that I used to talk to like on the weekly, and like we would bounce ideas and stuff like that. But there's always been this like almost like collusion within BMX where like the big brands were like, man, I really wish like that stolen bikes or that alienation or whatever would just kind of disappear, you know, because then there'd be more of us, like the real brands that are injecting money back into BMX and things like that. But unfortunately, that's the world. Like you're always going to have to compete. It's Darwinism, right? And so if you're doing such a good job at the marketing and taking care of your riders and creating that ecosystem, you should be light years ahead of them. And so you should be able to weather all the storms. But I do agree that there are brands that sometimes pop in and take a chunk, and then this brand takes a chunk. And then if obviously there's a pandemic and a world catastrophe that happens that kind of like levels the playing fields for a little bit, and then everybody can eat. And then all of a sudden it gets taken away and everyone's like, oh, well, now it's like survival of the true fittest. Maybe, like as you said, maybe some of those brands disappear, which hopefully is good, which should have been 2-3 years ago by my calculations, but they're still kind of kicking, right? So let's see where this year leads in that aspect. Hopefully some people that maybe work for some of the brands, or maybe some of the brands are listening to this podcast at some point, are like, oh, again, maybe the conversation does spark an idea for them to be like, you know what, they're right. Maybe we should bring back a Road Fools type video, or a contest series, or me and Caleb have been talking about kind of like bringing back the old Vital BMX concept of like, we rent a house, we shove like 10 dope bike riders in there for like a month or two and let them go and do stuff, and like not just ride bikes, but like we can go drift cars and shoot guns and do fun stuff that people want to like. Like when you really love or like look up to a rider, you can almost watch them do anything, because like you're like, man, I'm so mesmerized by their skill at one area that I'm like, what can they do in somewhere else? It's like they're like your little superheroes, you know?
That's literally the next point I have to make. That's so good. Finish your thought.
Those ideas, brother. I'm trying to pluck some of the ones that you threw out earlier, just subconsciously. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, where I think BMX could benefit the most is if there was like almost like a round table, like a place where everybody would drop their guards and be like, all right, cool. You're from this brand, you're from that brand, you're from this media company, you're a YouTuber, you're whatever. Let's just shoot the shit one weekend or whatever and just like see what we can do. And I'm sure like the bigger brands, like brands that kind of like get along, like let's say like I don't know, like Sabrosa and Colt, you know, I think they talk and they're like, all right, what do you got cooking? But if more of them did it, then maybe like that synergy could be born. And even like, again, to bring up the Trey thing, like I think it's amazing what he's done with, Swamp Fest. I've gone a few times. I even like drove to Adam LZ's house and dragged him to the event so I could, like have another dude that's like outside of the scope now to bring back in and whatnot.
Mm.
But there it was like all the dude, so many riders from around the world, skateboarders, just a cool BMX party, BMX brands like selling merch. I mean, you and I shot the shit for a little while. It's the first time we got to meet in real life, and like
Yep.
it was awesome. Like, but it's just so few and far in between. And then, I mean, I guess this is just like a life problem, but it always just feels so high school and cliquish. Like, oh, bro, I can't go over there because X, Y, Z's over here. I'm gonna go over here or whatever. But I do think that sometimes like scarcity or just like when things are down, I do think people sometimes are like, all right, man, like I know we have had beef over the years. Like let's squash that and see if we can make something happen.
Yeah, because when everything gets burned down, the phoenix rises from the ashes. And that's
Oh man, I can't think of the exact. I think that's the same thing I heard in this Aaron Rodgers movie where it's like your ego needs to be sometimes like a phoenix. Like it needs to be burnt down by things for then to rise from the ashes, but in a new way, like in a different way that's not as ego focused.
Yeah, man, so good. So if we're talking about BMX and the industry of things, like trying to focus at least some attention on reaching people who don't ride, like creating new BMX riders or overlapping to other things, what do you think like are some ways that could be done?
I'll give you one that I've always wanted to do, but I always felt like if you don't do it right, it comes off corny.
Yeah.
But when I moved to Florida, I'm in Miami now. And so I'm only like 2.5, 3 hours from Shadow and Sabrosa. And then they've built up Juvenile Hall. And Juvie Hall is like their bike shop, which is like their way to kind of experiment with like cool ways to sell direct and, like get a finger on the pulse. We were talking one time and I came up with this idea that, again, if not done right, it could be corny. But if someone like myself with a YouTube channel that is also like, riding and creating content like within BMX or whatnot, if I did, as an example, every Saturday, a class for people to come ride with me, like learn in real life, but we also live streamed it or did things like that so people could subscribe and like create that hub where it's not just like a regional thing, but it is an international thing. Like I think those type of things, like more Woodwards, more brands going to Woodward, obviously with Woodward West closing down, that sucks because that's another problem within BMX,
Yep.
But more of like getting people on bikes. Again, in Florida, like where I'm at, there's not as many core BMX clicks anymore. They're around, but they're just kind of few and far in between around Florida. But there's so many rides, right? And so what I do is like I'll just go with a bunch of like random big bike riders and I'll just bunny hop over things and do all this stuff, like bar spin something. And people are like, oh, bro, can you hop over my bike? Can you do this? So by my sheer presence as a rider there, it might spark up somebody be like, man, I have these two big bikes, but maybe I should get a little BMX bike because that guy was jumping around and doing things. So like it's the grassroots aspect, going back to maybe bike shop trips where it's like stop at 10 of your shops and go and interact with people, make it a big deal. Like, hey, these 10 riders that haven't been together for like 2 years are going to get together for this event and do more of that, and figuring out the tying element of like the social media aspect, whether it is a live stream or a series that you can create to get people hyped. Because that's all it is, really, getting people hyped again.
Yeah, I love that idea. That is so good. And I think it would work. And I think if you keep that going, and I think if you continue to do that, you'll probably end up finding that there's another BMX rider who might go with you one time. And it's like, oh, this is sick. All right, now I'm going to do this. And now it becomes 3, then 5.
Yep.
And then now all of a sudden, your group of BMX riders with the big bike guys is the same amount of people. And the group becomes that much bigger as a whole. And everyone intermingles with each other. And the community grows because of that. And then the ripple effects of that are things that we can't really know or predict, but they're real and they exist.
Well, and that kind of goes back to what we were talking about, these like gatekeepers or people that tell you like what BMX should be or whatnot. It's gotten to the point now where anybody with a phone can be your own BMX industry. Because if you're far removed from that industry and like you buy your own bike parts, but you create content that people pay attention to, and eventually you get some people that support you, that want you to promote their tech project or whatever it is, right? Um, you don't have to like subscribe to what they think is good for BMX. This is what I think is good for BMX. I'm gonna make it. If I get 500 people to watch it, cool. Like, imagine yourself in front of 500 people teaching somebody how to do a bar spin, right?
Yep.
And so to me, it's kind of like, what if, like, I look at the big streamers like Kai Cenat and people like that. They're doing their streamer academy, right? What if we had a how to become a successful like BMX content creator?
Yeah.
Here's the steps that you can do, right? I think that there'd be so many people that are like, man, I've always wanted to ride, but I always knew that it would have to be a pet project. But what if there was a way that I could monetize it, not to like become rich or something, but to sustain, to have a hobby that kind of like you break even,
Yeah.
or you make a little bit of money to now go on some road trips or whatever. It's so possible now more than ever. You don't need cameras anymore. You don't need an expensive anything. You can literally, with an old iPhone and a little microphone you buy for like $150 online, you can be a podcaster now. You can be whatever you want to be. Sure, it's not easy. Like anything, it's highly competitive and stuff like that. But what else are you going to do? Like, if you're a 13-year-old kid right now watching this and you have this idea, start today. Like, I always heard this about investing. The best day to invest was yesterday. The second best day is today, right? So start today. Pick up a camera. Hey, what's up, YouTube? And start your journey. Yeah.
Yes. And I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing at the fact that you were to a T describing me, because yeah, I had kind of some connections in the BMX industry, and I had some videos that did really well before my YouTube channel. And I did stuff, and I had jams, and I had all of this, but I was like, Lip Lords was the only, like, people would come up to me at Raise and be like, oh, are you that Lip Lords guy? And it was just because of my edits with that. And so, like, I was never a professional BMX rider before my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I did exactly what you're saying. I'm still using an iPhone 11 as my camera right now.
Yeah.
I was in my bedroom at my parents' house with a shitty green screen fabric behind me that my bed is on the other side of. And it's funny because you started that by talking about how these like gatekeepers have their idea of what BMX is, and anyone can make their own industry of BMX that doesn't have to adhere to that. And that's exactly what I set out to do with this YouTube channel before I even started it. I had a conscious thought from the beginning, and I've said this so many times, so I'm sorry, everyone, but I think the more people who hear it, the better, because I think everyone needs to realize this, is that like anyone can do what I did. I started in the beginning knowing the potential of YouTube and having the thought of, if I build a platform that allows me to sustain myself, not from money from the BMX industry, that means I can talk about the things that nobody else is allowed to talk about or too scared to talk about. I can do whatever I want, and I can be myself wholeheartedly. And that's exactly what I did. And I've done it for so long that it's grown to the point that it is, that now I'm working on a project right now that is encompassing the entire BMX industry. And the owners, the brand managers, like it's a massive undertaking, but I've built myself to the point, fully like self-built, and the people who filmed me when I asked them to this point of being able to reach out to the entire BMX industry and have almost every single person hear my idea and be like, fuck yeah, I want in on this. And it's in the middle of happening, and I'm hoping I can get it done soon so that it can be not as vague as what I'm saying right now.
Right.
But it's just a perfect example. And I purposefully, even before the concept of my YouTube channel, was like, I want to be the guy who shows everyone that you can make it from a 4-foot prefab Woodward quarter pipe in Ohio. I'm not moving, like I'm not moving to LA. I'm not moving to Austin. I'm going to stay in my hometown, and I'm going to make this happen to show everyone else that it's possible. And then this YouTube channel happened, and I didn't mean to like jump on a soapbox there, but when you described that, I was like, dude, you're literally like, that's what I did. And you're 100, like I'm the example that proves that you're right, basically. And I love all of this stuff because these conversations, these things that we're doing and the ideas like what you just said, and hopefully the ideas I'm going to talk about in a second are the kinds of things that can really have an impact when you say that BMX is dead. And I'm like, what are we going to do about it? And then you say that idea. It's like, that is the kind of stuff that we can actually do and make a change. And us having this conversation, we could have totally not done this. We could have just done this through the phone call, and then it would have never helped anyone. It never would have inspired anyone. No company people could have seen it and been like, oh, that makes that, I might not fully agree with what they're saying, but it makes me think. And now I have my own ideas.
Yep.
And yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just got inspired as well. I always thought about it this way. You know, you don't get to pick the cards you're dealt in life, but you have two choices. You can either play those cards or you can fold. And so I've always had, you know, like two perspectives. I can be like, damn, look at my life. Like my dad died, just me, my brother, my mom, and I can be woe is me, or I can make something of myself and get out of my crappy situation. Cause I lived in Watts, which is like Compton basically. So imagine like a light-skinned Argentinian person in a predominantly Black and Hispanic neighborhood. It was not good for me or my brother.
Oh boy.
So we had to move out of there. And BMX was my conduit for that. Like, dude, me and my friends would ride bikes, and sometimes like the gangbangers would come and steal my bike to go do drug runs or a drive-by or something. And then if they felt good, they would bring my bike back like 3 or 4 hours later. And my bike was probably used for like crazy crime, you know? But, you know, because my mom was like, and also my mom, single mom, didn't know English, didn't know how to drive, was working at Walmart as a janitor and worked her way up like over the course of 10 years to become like an assistant manager and stuff. So as a, which is very, you know, keen to the moment right now, but as a son of an immigrant, I had no choice. Like, you remember that brand failure, you know, like success isn't an option. Yeah. For me, failure was not an option. So everything I did with as much conviction as I could. And if I got into it, I was like really into it. Bikes, school, business, cars, things of that nature. And I was a late bloomer for YouTube, you know, like we had, you know, the Come Up had our kind of like webisodes and stuff like that. But when I decided to like start my own channel, I think I was like 28 or 29 already, which in that time I was like, man, all my YouTuber friends are like 21. Like this, I feel like an old man. But it was one of those things where like once you pick up the camera and you start talking and finding your own voice and finding your community, the people that like jive with what you're saying, what does it matter what everyone else is doing? And I got so good that to this day, I have a big DSLR camera with like a tripod and the mic and stuff like that. But I feel so confident when I whip it out. At that time, back then, it was like, oh, this is weird, man. Who's this guy talking to the camera, right? But I didn't care. Now it's like you pull that out, someone's like, how many subs you got? Like, you know what I mean? It's all changed, you know?
Yeah.
But it just goes to show you that if you just stay on it, and that's another reason, like I was dormant for a while on my channel. I didn't post as much. I would always post videos with food or little things here and there, but it was dormant because I just didn't have time. And then I knew that if I started posting content that I knew could resonate, it would ruffle feathers and all this other stuff. And then one day I was like, man, why do I care? Like, what does it matter? Go back to like me from 10 years ago and get back into it. And honestly, it's just such a coincidence that like now the 2016 thing is popular, where everyone's like, bring back 2016 era, and like things from that era are becoming popular again, and vloggers are coming back. Like when I went to California, I got John Hicks to ride BMX again, and now he's like, bro, I'm coming to Miami to ride bikes. So it is one of those things, like as much as like we joke around, it's like you are inspiring people. And so like between my close friends, I'm always like, yeah, that's my influencer in me. Like I'm always like influencing people to do some things, you know. But it's like, dude, somebody today is going to really resonate with this, and they're going to DM you or DM me. They're going to be like, man, I've been wanting to do this project, or I've been wanting to do this. And because of you guys in this conversation, I did it. And it all stemmed from like this negative idea that quote unquote BMX is dead. Didn't even take time to watch the video, but you saw the thing, and now like we're talking about it.
Yeah. 1000%, man. So trying to reel myself back in to get back to. So you gave a couple ideas and concepts for like the how do we do that side of BMX as an industry appealing to an outside audience in some way, or trying to at least focus on bringing new people in. I wanted to hear how you thought about it before I gave my ideas, because I just wanted to hear, you know, your concept of it too. Because this is something that I've not only been talking about for like months and months and months and months, feeling like I'm screaming into a void,
Hmm.
but it's also something that I've been like really, really passionate about. And like I've made a lot of videos that people, pros in BMX, people who tell me I'm not pro and I shouldn't talk about this shit because I don't know what it's like. People who literally, and like I'm not saying that for any reason other than like I know the response that people have when you talk about something that could be perceived as negative. And I take a little bit of a different approach than you in that I put all of it out there instead of strategically, like, because my brain doesn't work in a way where I'm like, oh, if I do part of it, more people probably watch it, and then I could do another part, and then it'll be the
Yeah.
follow. I just can't think that way. I'm just,
You get all out.
I get passionate, and I'm like, I'm making the hour-long video where I just sit there with no B-roll, no anything. I am just talking for 45 minutes about this concept. And so I've really thought deeply about this stuff. And so I have a couple ideas that I think companies have actually paid attention to, because since I've talked about these things, we've seen it more and more in BMX. Yeah. And I don't know if that's the ether, me putting it out there and then it popping to somebody else. But like things like how there used to be shop stops constantly for companies. And with COVID, we got away from it for obvious reasons with COVID.
Right.
But since then, it's kind of not really happened as much. And for everyone who's heard me talk about this a million times, sorry, you're hearing it again. But the idea of companies still do trips, they still take their riders across the country on trips. My thought is, okay, you already have a trip planned to blank city in blank state. If you're going to drive there, you have your dealer like itinerary, glossary, whatever you want to, Rolodex. Look and find someone on the way and just plan like 4 hours of a day that you contact figure out who's willing to have a shop stop, and just roll up, put it out there that you're going to be there, have your filmer who's already filming your trip, film that as part of this thing. It can be its own video. Then from there, you work with this shop and you say, all right, we're rolling through town. We'd love to stop, bring out all your local BMX people. But also, do you have any local cycling organizations? Do you have any kids like YMCA bicycle clubs or anything like that in your local area that you could reach out to and say, hey, these BMX pros are going to be at your local bike shop that you already go to on this day at this time. If you want to come check it out, just like stop by. We'll order some pizza. They're going to be riding. Yeah. They're going to be talking to people. And through that, you take a few hours of a day in the middle of your trip to visit a shop that probably already carries your stuff, or at least used to some capacity of it. And now you're stoking the area of people in general. You're giving the shop even more of a reason to carry your stuff. The pros are there making connections with the local people that's going to make them want to buy the signature stuff. And because the shop facilitated that experience, there's going to be more of a likelihood that they go to the bike shop to do it. And it's all because you had the foresight and thought to put this planning into effect for a trip you were already gonna go on.
Right.
That's one of my thoughts, and it just makes sense. It's like the low effort, low budget way to do it.
And to piggyback on that, when they're there, guess what? You get to make some content. You get to do, like, if you're a savvy bike shop, you're gonna obviously promote it like the whole month. Like, hey, come this day. You might, if as an example, Fit and S&M are buying the pizza, well, you're going to go buy the sodas, and you might have like a long bunny hop contest or whatever. And then you can get to go live or create content that you can then promote for the next jam, the next team, the next year. All that stuff's good. Yeah. Super good idea.
It just makes sense.
Ole Miss just scored a field goal right before halftime. It's 17-13. Miami U is ahead right now, so I'm watching the game on the side. So sorry.
Is that your team?
I mean, now because I live here, so yeah. My brother and his wife went to University of Miami, so like I feel like I need to cheer for them.
Okay,
Yeah.
just making sure that the team you were cheering for is the one that's in the
You're
lead.
winning.
There we go.
Yeah. Thank you.
So that's one of my ideas I've been talking about for months. Well, I guess this is one I just wrote down. I'll get to another one I've talked about for months too. But the idea of if you're a company and you have a pro rider in an area, the same concept of the bike shop finding local organizations and cycling groups and working with them, like put it to your pro rider whose job is to represent you to go out into their local community and try to find those things as well. I know that can be weird and maybe not everyone's going to do that, but that's an idea that I literally just had. And like, do something for the community and like give away a complete bike, give away some helmets. There's organizations for this stuff that exist everywhere.
Yeah.
Every major city has these things. And if we as an industry of BMX started to tap into those, we grow our reach and we're not just focusing on the same set of eyeballs that are available within our little sphere. So that was one I just thought of right now.
And to expound on that, cities usually have budgets for that kind of stuff too. So like you can probably, if you now more than ever, there's so many tools that people have like ChatGPT and things that you can create a very nice proposal with your ideas. You're not asking for money, but if you do this enough times and people resonate with it, maybe you could get a small little stipend that the city gives you to buy pizza or to pay your day wage or something along the lines. I go back to looking at like a brand like Fiend, with Garrett Reynolds being an active badass bike rider and having a team of other badasses. But I'm sure while he's doing these shop stops and stuff like that, he is 100% seeing what is moving the needle for him and what he has to do. Sadly, not a lot of people, I would say 99% of bikers, couldn't afford to start a team and things like that. But a YouTube channel is so much less overhead and things like that you can start, and like that could be what you bring, because I think there's like over 5 million YouTube channels now and growing, but there's so many niche. You can always niche down. Like you could be let's say you're the 4-foot quarter pipe guy. And let's say I'm more of like the Miami street and skate park guy. Well, there could be somebody else in Miami that wants to do the flatland aspect or the whatever aspect. When all three of us are posting content, guess what? People are bouncing around between those channels because like the algorithm does that. So it's just, I think, again, going back to all this is just having these dialogues. Like if you're doing all these great things and you're spurring that forward in your way, when I'm doing something here, people are doing something in California, more eyeballs for sure.
Yep. And that's the whole point of all of it, is try to get more eyeballs that aren't already paying attention to you, because right now everyone's competing for the same eyeballs. And
but are they really? Like,
I think so.
I don't think so. I think because even you yourself, if you drop 10 videos in a row every single day and each one of them got 20,000 views, if you really went into the numbers, the overlap of all 10 videos is probably like 20 or 30%, because algorithms don't work exactly like they used to. Now it's like spreading around all these different places and it's hitting different people. But then Odyssey drops 10 videos and the overlap there might be 5%. And, like just conceptually.
Yeah, I guess I should have been more specific. And when I say eyeballs, it does come across as like the literal sense of like people watching something.
Oh, yeah.
I guess what I'm meaning as BMX companies are all competing for the same like people to buy their stuff, essentially.
Right.
Like if company A, street rider who rides a certain way, company B, street rider who rides kind of similar, they're competing for the same person, like trying to get that person to buy their stuff. And, and it's that same pool of eyeballs that I feel like just gets repetitively competed for in terms of like consumers, I guess, not just viewers of things.
Yeah. Or also, you know what I was just thinking about to kind of piggyback on that too, is like when Nigel is doing this big thing with like McDonald's or giving away all these bikes or something like that, like, are there brands reaching out to him and be like, hey, dude, what you're doing is awesome. Like, how can we get in on this? Like, maybe obviously if his bike sponsors giving away the bikes, not in that way, but like when he's doing other things, I'm sure there's other synergies that they can get. And like, hey, since you're having a jam that day, we want to have another jam after your jam over here to, since people already mobilized, might as well capitalize on that. But some people I think view that as like stepping on people's toes or trying to fish from the same pond. So like, I don't know, maybe that might be not the best idea. But again, like I think when Monster in 2000, probably 17 or 2018, when they kind of launched Go BMX Day, like, do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So at the time I had this big RV called the Rig, and I got all the dudes to get in the rig, and we drove all the way to San Francisco to go there. When we showed up there, I'll never forget the I don't need to say his name, but at the time, the Monster TM was like kind of pissed that we showed up because we kind of like took away some of his like juice.
Yeah.
Like where he was having the jam, our bus pulled up and all the kids migrated to go
yeah.
over there. And he got kind of salty about it. I think he still hates me to this day for that. But it wasn't what I was trying to do. It was just like, bro, like we do the same things. Like you're doing this cool event. Like, why wouldn't we go there to support and do our own take? And like, if at some point you're going to the skate park and other kids want to keep riding street and we're going to go street riding, like, I get it. Like maybe like for the Monster report where it's like, oh, well, we had 600 bike riders come, but halfway through it, 300 disappeared. You know, like I understand that, but it was just like, that's not what we meant. But ultimately that is what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes so much sense for what you're saying. Oh, sorry. So,
you know, one thing I was going to say that I think why we have such different takes on things too is like, I think you're inoculated by being in Ohio and riding like a single skate park. By being a content creator in Southern California, I was literally exposed to like, if I made a video and somebody didn't like it, I would be at a skate park and the next day somebody would confront me.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
geez.
And oh, dude, like serious shit. I mean, did you ever watch the Austin Augie beef where like he showed up to OSS and then he got jumped and stuff like that? Like
yeah, I remember seeing
there was like to the point of like blows and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. And I guess I just try to approach stuff from such a looking at all perspectives point of view that I'm trying to see like how the person who's watching me being like, what the hell are you talking about? How they're thinking, and say things in a way that even that person can't help but be like, oh, I understand where you're coming from with what you're saying.
But that's such a reflection on the person and not so much as you. Again, like if someone sees my video, they see my name, they already feel a type of way, let's say. They see the title, they're like, I hate that guy and I hate that idea. But did you even click? Did you even watch it? And then to form your own opinion, again, going back to the critical thinking, not relying on like your preconceived notion of somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody might not like me because I'm from LA or I have tattoos or I was part of this brand or that brand, whatever. But before you continue to perpetuate your hate, take the time to be like, let me just get to know it. And who knows, maybe I do like what he was saying.
Yeah, I'm those kind of people, you're never, can't say never, but you're very unlikely to win those people over. The way that I approach things is from a mindset of like looking at everything from such a way and talking and explaining my concepts in such a way that even those people, if they actually listened to it, couldn't have anything to say because I've addressed it from every perspective with it in the most reasonable way possible, to where anything that would be like said either has to be a very constructive argument that's like, okay, I heard what you said, but this is why I feel a certain way, or just that complete blind hate that's like, I don't care what you said, I just hate you.
Right. But think about like even this conversation, right? If they see you and I talking now, right? So now they're like, oh, these two schmucks I don't like, whatever, right? In order for them to truly get into the nuance, they'd probably have to be 30, 40 minutes into this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are lazy or don't have the time or whatnot, which I respect.
Yeah.
But that's why sometimes it's so hard to really captivate everything into like a 10-minute video. So like people can kind of digest all that really quickly and be like, you know what? Because I'm seeing the comments rolling in. Like the video's already at 10,000 views.
Jeez.
And so for me, 10,000 views first day, I can kind of like expound on like how many comments, stuff like that. But dude, they're overwhelmingly good Because again, like you said, like I took the time to give my perspective, to do some digging, to find the right things that help people resonate with my perspective. But
Yep.
that's all it is. It's just my perspective. For
Yep.
somebody in California to get butthurt and DM me or text me all this negative bullshit, it's like, why don't you just make your own video? And like, you don't even have to address me. You can make a video as to BMX is alive and well, and you can go about that way.
Yeah.
But I think a part of them knows that like the negativity gets the ball rolling, and then within the subject matter, which is not negative, you can be like, oh, someone like you could be like, hey man, I like what you're saying. Let's chat about it. Let's expound on this.
Mm-hmm.
And now guess what? You might have 10 more interviews with 9 other people that are like, bro, everything you guys were saying is things I want to do.
Mm-hmm. And in my mind, I have the time to try and explain. This is why my videos are 45 minutes long when I talk about things. That
How long has this already been?
an hour and 35.
That's awesome.
It,
Like, dude, you're really good at this. Like, I got to give you your flowers. Like, it feels like we just jumped on, and like it feels very. You are like a Joe Rogan of BMX now,
bro. That's literally what I try to be. That might make people mad, but that's what I try to do.
I mean, I started listening to Joe episodes like in the hundreds. You know what I mean? So I've been on his stuff forever. Tim Ferriss, all these other podcasters. And the thing is, like, you start realizing as we get older, you start becoming more empathetic to other people and just looking at how to spread the positivity. And yes, I understand where people, when they only see the title or the thumbnail, they're like, oh, this guy's perpetuating negativity. Okay, again, look into it, see where the perspective is, see what it's doing, and then be like, okay, cool. Like, and that's where sometimes, again, that's that person where they can't give someone flowers, be like, hey man, like, I know why you did it. I don't like it, but you know, in the end, I guess it is another conversation to have.
I mean, it's exactly what I did in the beginning, saying like, I see why people would be mad at what you said. And I feel like you're reasonable enough to hear someone be like, I listened to your video. I like where you were going and the concepts you talked about, but I hate you for clickbaiting it and what you did there. That is totally valid because someone took the time, but it's the problem lies in when people don't take that time and they just like push you to the side because they don't like it from the get-go and don't even give the time of day.
Yeah. And it, I mean, it goes to everything. Like, in order for something like probably your most popular videos, like it's all about that thumbnail in reality. Like, you know, like I have a video on my Instagram that got like 2 million views, and it's me trying to ice pick this tiny little hole, right? And the first time I did it, it did all right. It got like 30 or 40,000 views. And I was like, I created this, like, I was like, how do I recycle this content? Because I want to go back and do this. Oh, I'm actually going to go back to LA pretty soon. And I really do want to go do this. I'm going to repost a clip and say like, man, this was like 200 attempts. I almost did it. I'm going to go back and I will do it someday. And I posted the thumbnail. And again, it is very like for anybody on any kind of bicycle, they're like, damn, that guy got his little tiny peg in that little hole. I'm sure there's bike riders that are doing quadruple tail whip 360s right now. They're like, why the hell did my video not get 2 million views? Why is this schmuck getting 2 million views, right? But just like little things that, like, as someone that's been making content for a long time, you kind of pick up on it and do. I'm sure there's brands that are like, man, why that guy? Why not us? You know, like people just can't help it, I guess, sometimes.
Imagine the video, Alfredo and Brant race to see who can ice pick the tiny little hole the fastest.
Have you ever tried to do it on something? First off, it was round. Secondly, it was like up at a height that if you don't do it right, it does go forward. I definitely want to go back, and if you ever come to Cali, that could be something we can compete for. You
know what I'm saying? Because I've done them before in coping. I did one at Woodward.
On the side of the coping, like in the hole?
Yeah, I did one at Woodward that was a bank to... Did you ever go to Woodward East?
No, I still haven't.
Okay, well, there's a setup there. It's tiny, but there's a bank, and then there's a grind ledge that's coping, and I went up and I did ice to fakie.
That's so sick. Well, if later on, go back and watch that video. I think if I had fakied, I could pull it. But the one difference I will say is, like, anytime, obviously we both ride brakes, we both ice pick things a lot, so we both have that nuance. Anytime you ride up a quarter pipe, the way you can float or loft your way onto the ice pick is so different than from the flat ground. And it's also so hard to time it perfectly, like every time when you don't have transition. And also that street has like a little slight uphill. And so it was driving me crazy because it wasn't like I had 30 consecutive close attempts. It was like one was very close and the next one was like I almost went over the bars. But it would be sick to do that. I feel like, and it would perform well, like because
Yeah.
it's now adding another layer. Like I already said I did it. Now somebody told me that they're gonna do it. Now it's a battle. And dude, we all like competition. Like
Mhm.
humans innately are competitive. Like otherwise we wouldn't survive, right? So
Yep.
it again, but what is that? That's a great video. And then guess what? Shadow or Sabrosa or Kink or sorry, Fit could be like, all right, well, we're gonna have the best ice pick award or a contest or something. And then Sabrosa could be like, all right, we're giving away a set of pegs. You know what I mean? Like
Full
there's so many ways to
circle
integrate.
marketing.
Right.
Full circle. You have one thing and you take it all the way around. It makes so much sense.
But then somebody be like, these capitalistic bastards are always trying to make money off of it. You need to do this for the soul of it. And it's like, yes, but you can do both things. Like you can have fun, you can do all these things, and you can also make a buck. There's nothing wrong with it.
I mean, there was a dude who, in reply to my comment on your video, saying, "Oh, just doing this to generate content." And I'm like, I don't even want to go into fully because like it's very obvious that what we're doing for this last hour and 40 minutes and counting is not just to generate content. Yeah, that's what we're doing, but the purpose of it is to be helpful and constructive and productive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also it is entertaining, and that's the cool thing about YouTube versus other platforms, that this video will live on forever and query and random like come up like way later. And who knows, 3 or 4 years from now, somebody's gonna be watching this video that day and it will inspire them. Then you and I can go back to that video and be like, damn, look at how many things that we started there turned into something else.
Yep.
Again, like I was watching this other documentary where this lady went to a football game. She got spotted at the football game by the camera crew. They put her on and it jump started her modeling career. She blew up. All these crazy things happened because of one little photo of, she was smart. She was very attractive. She was working as a bartender. Somebody spilled a drink on her dress. So she took it off and was just wearing her bra, but it was like a sports bra. So it still didn't look like she was like out there like that. But when they moved the camera for the right before halftime, the camera pans to her and she blows up and then she becomes a famous model. Sometimes those things really do happen. But guess what? If you're not making content, if you're not putting yourself out there, you miss every shot you don't take.
Yeah. The guy who turned into a model from his mugshot.
Oh, dude, that guy. That was a really good piercing, like blue eyes. Like, yeah.
Yes.
You know what? You know what's something super random for me that I made a video about this a long time ago and I thought about making it again. Do you remember Fat Tony?
Yeah.
Okay. So Fat Tony calls me one day and he's like, hey, Alf, like, I know you're in college and obviously I know you ride bikes. Terry Adams, I believe, got booked to do the show, but he couldn't go. And they needed someone that had like, was in school, but had a secret hidden talent. So they're like, hey, they're interested in like a BMX rider. Can you send them like some clips just so they can see what they can maybe come up with? So I was like, oh man, what do I do? So I wanted to impress them. So I went out front to my house and I had these 2 trash cans. They weren't like the full tall trash cans, but they were like up there. And I put them next to each other and I pedaled and I jumped over both trash cans. I filmed it on my iPhone 2G or 3G. I forget which one it was. And I sent it to them and they loved it. They're like, can you be in Burbank tomorrow at like 10 a.m. to do this? And they're like, also, how many people do you think you could jump? And I was like, I don't know, 12. And they're like, all right, cool. So I drive to Burbank. I still don't know what the show is or whatever. And I go into makeup. They put makeup on me. They did my hair all weird. And then they're like, all right, you're going to go into the crowd. When she comes out, you're going to be in the crowd. They're going to announce your name. You're going to come down. You're going to act like you're not super good at this one random sport. And you're going to jump over people. I was like, all right, cool. And so I'm looking around and I was like, who the hell is this Ellen person? Why does it say Ellen everywhere? And so I'm in the audience and like, it's nothing. It's like 99% women. And the lady Ellen comes out, whatever. And then I see like Ellen DeGeneres show, blah, blah, blah. And so she says my name. She's like, Alfredo Mancuso. And then like, I was like, oh, that's my cue. So like I have to like be very energetic. I run down, whatever. And she's like, so what do you do? And I was like, oh crap. I'm in college, and today I'm going to jump over some people. She's like, you're going to jump over people? And I was like, oh, on my bike. And I was like, where is my bike? And then out of nowhere, like the curtains open, they bring my bike and they lay down like 9 people and I bunny hop over them. I never thought anything of it. I kind of had heard of the name, but it wasn't like something that resonated. Bro, that changed my life. Like I was
Yeah.
in college, like the show aired live, and then that day, at the time, MySpace and my Facebook were blown up. It was pretty funny because it was all like girls and a lot of like chubby older women, but whatever. They were all DMing me like, "Oh my god, saw you on the Ellen show, so sick, whatever." And what's even funnier was I had just gotten on DC like Flow, like DC Shoes Super Flow. But I told the TM, I was like, "Hey man, I'm going on this show called Ellen." And he's like, "No hell, there's no way you're going on that." I was like, "Yeah, yeah." He's like, I was like, "Would I get paid if I wear the DC Shoes hoodie like during the show?" And he's like, "Yeah, bro, we'll cut you a check." And I was like, "All right, sick." So when I was wearing the hoodie, they're like, "Yeah, you can't wear any branded logos." And I was like, "All right, cool." So I took it off, but I smuggled it with me to like the seat. And so right when they started rolling, I put the hoodie on. And then when she calls my name, I run down and I stretch the hoodie to make sure it's like a very prominent DC Shoes logo. Dude, that essentially helped me get noticed to go on the trips to then eventually turn pro for DC Shoes, which was
Wow.
all kind of crazy.
And
all because, again, taking chances. Yeah.
and that one moment of you being like self-aware enough to ask that question of, hey, will you pay me if I wear this thing on this show? And I think that is the gap that is missing for so many riders in BMX, is that we don't have people who are being that like guiding force of like, hey, you need to think from that opportunistic perspective to see these things. You need to be ready for those. And I think it's just because people are so busy trying to keep companies alive that it's like, and not very many people really think this way anyways, that it's hard.
Well, you know what's funny is like I kind of figured it wasn't going to be the same thing, and I understood their perspective, but I told Volume and Demolition the same thing. I was like, hey, if I get the Volume and Demolition logos, and I put some fat Volume and Demolition logos on the bike, just like it be, and it is true. He was like, well, how many of those? And I think that at that time it went live to 30 million people.
Holy cow.
Like her show had motion back in the day, right?
Yeah.
And so he was like, how many people do you think are actually going to end up buying a BMX bike because of this? And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Now, how many people would buy a DC Shoes hoodie? For sure. Like
right.
I can understand that perspective from that. But you're right. And one thing I'll add to that, dude, growing up, there's a dude that I think to this day still probably works at Odyssey or Sunday or whatever. And when we were growing up, being hungry as a BMX rider back in the day was like the worst thing you can do. People were like, yeah, that guy's good, but he's too hungry, bro. He's always like trying to go places or stuff like that. And I don't know if that's because BMX is like this subculture of a sub sport. You know, it's like it's not a sport, it's a lifestyle or whatever. That people are like, they frown upon competitiveness, especially if you're a street rider. You know, it's like it's frowned upon to be like, oh, you're gonna one up somebody or you're gonna do something better.
Yeah.
And in that regard, I always kind of had this weird check and balance system where I was like, oh man, am I coming off as hungry? But I want to eat. I want to like, be able to like buy cool things or whatever it was at that time when I was young. And I'll never forget where it was just like, oh, that guy, he's too hungry. And then when you flip it in business or in life, it was like, that guy's going some places because he's hungry. Right?
Yeah. For whatever reason, it's not cool to try in BMX and make things happen.
Yeah.
So to bring it back again, I got a few more ideas in that same like avenue. One is kind of just a question. Obviously, you aren't going to be able to answer this, but you'll have a sense for it. How many companies utilize Google Ads or things like it?
I can tell you when I do see the ones that are doing it, because that's something that I don't know if I haven't told you, but I have an agency where I help people with social media, with different things. And so I think I ran my first Facebook ads like in 2016 or 17. I forget. It's been a long time. And yeah, you'd be surprised how non-savvy some BMX brands are, but some of them are not. Like Source, Dance Comp,
But
Shadow Sabrosa, those type of brands, like you definitely know that they know or they've hired the people that know those things. But
brand,
even like even brands like not promoting their content on Instagram, not boosting things or not like to me, it's like a big missed mark. And I would probably shrink up some budget somewhere else to make sure that content because that goes back to what I was saying, where some brands are lazy and they just literally repost their riders' content. If you're gonna do that and it doesn't have any motion, like boost it, or figure out ways to re-edit it or do something. The algorithm now versus when we started doing this stuff, it tells you if something tanks, it's them telling you like, try again. That wasn't good. Try again. Oh, boom, you got viewership. Replicate that.
and to follow up on it even more, why do we see legitimately zero pre-roll YouTube ads from BMX companies?
Because I think they rely on the wow factor or the virality of something. Like, how many times do like a Dennis Henderson video part go viral? It's crazy. Like, and so maybe they're like, well, we have enough of Dennis going viral in that way. Maybe they're like, well, let's just not spend the budget on this other thing because the viewership is there. But maybe you're right. Maybe all of that, like, let's say there are truly 1.5 million BMX riders in the world. So anytime Dennis or Garrett or Chad or those guys drop a part, it's like 100% of BMX watched it. And when it goes mega viral, then it's like mountain bikers and all this other stuff, right? But again, like maybe those other consumers that aren't true BMX aficionados could benefit from seeing a paid ad of something else.
And what you just said leads me perfectly into the next one. In making BMX more accessible, like create more than just the next craziest edit. Because the Google ad that's a pre-roll video on YouTube for a BMX company should not be the viral clip of any rider that they already had get 1 million views. That's not what you should be putting as a pre-roll ad, because that's never going to sell your bikes ever.
You know who was good at that was Sean Burns. Do you remember when he would do the bike checks with like the hot girls with the homeless guy?
That's genius.
It's just thinking outside the box. I did a bike check where I had this super attractive girl I was seeing back in the day. Like I wrote her lines. And so like it was a Sabrosa Magnum sprocket. So I had her like talk about Magnum condoms or, like I wrote the lines that I knew that she would say innocently that would do. And that bike check, I think got 500,000 views or something like that. Like it did really good.
I wonder why.
Yeah. I mean, if you had to truly break it down, I think sometimes even the biggest brands are lazy. Like I think sometimes they're like anything. And maybe this goes back to like BMX being so small and core that there probably is only really 3 people working at that brand. And so like, I'm sure they're juiced, like it's not a diss, but sometimes it's like, if you're sitting there and you're bouncing ideas, like, all right, well, everybody drops a pedal edit the same way. Like, and this is the same pedal. And sadly, very few companies are actually making an original pedal. You know what? This is like a super segue, but I think it is interesting. When was the last time you saw an interesting ass part? Like the last time my brother and I talked about it was when you did the video that went viral of the socket or the seat post but that's been a claw thing from back in the day and stuff like that. But when was the last time anybody got hyped on like a hub, like the planetary hub? What was that, 6 years ago?
And guess what? You're talking to the dude who made it popular because no one else talked about it. And I recognized that opportunity in the moment. And I was like, hey, no riders can talk about this because they have parts sponsors and they don't make planetary hubs yet. So they can't. You are Free Night is Tal over in Israel who can't afford to pay BMX Media because BMX Media sucks so damn bad that they see this thing and they don't just immediately pick up on it because it's cool. That you have to pay them to talk about it, or to even get on their radar. And I don't want to go into that yet, but my point is I recognize that. And so I reached out to him and I was like, hey man, nobody's talking about this thing you're doing. And I think it's amazing and genuinely like game-changing technology. If you send me one, I will make videos about it. Those
Yep.
videos got tens of thousands of views, and I did it in like sequence of just video
Smart.
after video after video. People were pissed at me for how many videos I was posting about these things, but I was like, look, guys, this is working, and it's something that is like incredible and new, and it worked and it happened. And now, like, literally, the one that's laced to this rim,
That's so funny.
I named this hub. I helped design the hub shell. Like,
It's amazing.
So that's the kind of thing that BMX misses, those opportunities. But to answer your question, like, the planetary was probably the last like really interesting thing that captivated all of BMX.
Right.
And there's other things here and there. And to go back to what I'm saying about like making BMX more accessible, right now, we talked earlier about the marketing that exists in BMX. It's stuff that's made like for the riders that already exist. And really, BMX right now, in terms of media, is pretty much just a competition to find the next craziest edit and next crazy trick that people pay attention to for a couple days. And depending upon how good it is, maybe a couple weeks, and then it's gone. And when we're talking about marketing and media and the internet, that makes this and makes the next craziest thing 100% purely just entertainment to the normal people of the world who happen to find it. Like, anyone who watches a Dennis Anderson edit, they're watching it. If they don't ride BMX and they don't know what BMX is or anything about it, they are watching that out of entertainment or for entertainment because it showed up on their YouTube page. And the question becomes, how many people are seeing that and thinking about actually trying it? Very, very few, if anyone at all. Same with like R. Willie. R. Willie's stuff is so incredible, but it's entertainment. It's not an accessible thing that someone watches and thinks, oh yeah, I'm going to do that one day. There might be like 4 people, but one of those 4 people are the next R. Willie, and they're going to become that.
Yeah.
And so like my concept, this is another one I've been hitting on for months, is to make videos with the best riders in the world and have them just take a couple hours to make something that just simply shows how much fun BMX can be. Like, using Garrett as the example that I've used every time I talk about this. Show at the beginning of the video Garrett saying something like, hey, I'm Garrett Reynolds, the most winningest X Games gold medal rider. He'll never say that, but like, like, have it on the screen or some way of getting across how amazing Garrett is at BMX. And then this is just my example. It could be anything. I'm just trying to convey my point. And next thing you do is saying like, but BMX doesn't have to be this crazy X Games run or, you know, doing the stuff you see me doing right now on the screen. It can be just as simple as riding the pump track with your friends that's in your local town, and then show someone of Garrett's like level just having fun at a pump track, and then put dollars behind that and get that in front of normal people or people who are showing slight interest, the way you can, you know, focus Google ads and Facebook ads and Instagram, and focus that with your funnel in a way to get it to people who might actually, whatever, use the pros to go to the cities to say like, hey, we want to have an event where we're at the pump track. We just show people how, like, just show people our brand and show people BMX and how fun it is and all this stuff. And like, what I'm getting at by bringing that up is to say that this is why Scotty Kramer's YouTube channel and videos blew up the way that they did. It was literally just a group of friends, and then Scotty being the guy who recognized the moment and put it all in motion in a way that showed how much fun they were having. It wasn't about BMX. It was about the group, how they interact with each other, and the fun that they were having. And that is what made it reach outside of BMX. That's what made it reach all these kids, to the point where when I went to the Connecticut Jam, the Scotty Kramer benefit jam that Joe Doherty put on in 2016, Scotty was just at the point where he was able to be in a walker. And I'm not kidding you, dude. There were kids by the 50 to 100 in line just to talk to Scotty for
Right.
the entire day.
Yeah.
Like, it was I saw this in person, and this is Scotty and I started our YouTube channels, I believe, within a month of each other.
That's crazy.
And so I'm watching Scotty's channel just completely blow up, and I'm just mind blown by it. And then
one thing I will say, the Scotty thing was like a perfect storm of everything, because all of us were jumping on the YouTube thing around the same time. And so that fed the ecosystem of like content, because obviously LZ, Billy Perry, Hicks, us, all these channels, right? But the Scotty thing was so dope because it's one of those things where like you know, when they say it like takes 10 years to become an overnight success.
Yep.
That's an example of that, where like Scotty was what, 16 when he went to like Metro Jam and destroyed everything, right?
Yep.
He came from a family that, or where, you know, they were in BMX. He had like the racing background. Like, he was just built to be like an amazing athlete. And obviously he had the uncanny ability and the fearlessness. But then to also have like the big sponsors, go to X Games, when it was such a perfect storm of everything. So when at the time we were all chatting about it, we were like, of course Scotty's going to be the biggest. At first it's like everyone's like, why is he doing this? But then when you realize, again, going back to those ideas, when ideas are alive, or an idea is so good that everyone's like, oh, of course, like I should have thought of that, right? It was such a perfect moment of combining everything, like having access to the skate park, having access to the bike shop, the crew of people, the competition aspect, all of them learning, the synergies, the foam pit, like everything made perfect sense. When I would see the video and I would be like, oh, what a good video. The bike long jump with the spikes, like such a good idea. We would go and try and like, I'd be like, all right, well, how do I not steal an idea, but get creative along? So I'd be like, all right, let me set up a ghetto BMX obstacle course. So I would put like benches up to rooftops, and then we would ride it, and that video would perform, obviously not to his degree, but it would do good. You know, a couple 100,000 views at that time for us was like great.
Yeah. And I'm going to say one thing, but I have one point to get to before we actually talk about it, in that I think what you were a part of in the Come Up and the Come Up YouTube channel was, it was like that walked so Scotty's channel could run, kind of. Not in necessarily that Scotty would have seen inspiration by it or anything like that, but it was a example of something kind of similar that was successful. And then Scotty, what he did was like similar to that, but then took it to another level.
And obviously the other perspective of like him being like patient and like humble to like videotape somebody doing a tail whip, when we both know that he could have bunny hop double whipped it first try, had everybody be about him, but he was also like passing the torch to other people. Like all of that was like the perfect storm of like why it was so huge. And then obviously the culmination, the sad culmination, but like he touched so many people, and thankfully he did that, because obviously like that's what's keeping him going, like the aspect of what he created. One thing that you made me think about a true core problem within BMX, about all of this, the people with the best ideas, they transcend BMX.
Yeah.
Because if you and I have all these great ideas and we can create a BMX channel, but you're still kind of limited in like the ceiling, because there are so many people that once you have a great idea, guess what? I'm taking that and I'm applying that to our car business or to this other business. And guess what? There's a couple zeros added to that. So when people are like, you're doing this for money or this or that, it's like, well, of course, yeah, but also like I can just take my gifts or my ability somewhere else that is so much more. And also, no, there's no time frame. Like when you're in your mid 30s, late 30s, it's like, how much longer can I really do this for just like, you know, the pain aspect or whatever. But when you're in these other worlds, guess what? Mid 30s, you're actually young to start the entrepreneurial aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. And so to put a like cap on what I was getting at with all of the making BMX more accessible thing and talking about Scotty and all of that, it really like boils down to the personal connection. You know, Scotty had all of those perfect storm things in his corner to help make it happen. But without that personal connection that people could get through watching the group and how they interacted and how they had fun together and showed, like, it wasn't about BMX at that point. It was about them and how they worked together or against each other in some cases with those things. Like, without that personal connection, there wouldn't have been the same level of people gravitating towards it, because that's just the nature of humans and what we want to like gravitate towards in what we take in through entertainment or in our lives in general. And so like, I don't know what exactly it looks like to make BMX more accessible. You know, I gave that example with the pump track idea and just showing how fun BMX can be using someone who's the best. But like, there's an infinite number of ways that could be done. I just think that like that connection, and you used this word earlier, it creates superheroes in people's minds when they're watching something. Scotty Kramer was a superhero before he ever had a YouTube channel. And then that YouTube,
he's my hero,
dude, for real, mine too. My MySpace page used to say Scotty Kramer is the best BMX rider ever. Like, and there was videos of him on my MySpace page.
The day that I saw the contest footage from Metro Jam and he did a flip whip, I was like, because I think I'm only like 10 or 15 days younger than Scotty. I went that weekend and learned flip whips.
That's
like,
so
I was
funny.
like, I'm gonna go learn flip whips because that was so badass.
That's so funny. But like, Scotty is kind of one of the only people that I really even knew about or looked up to. And so he was on that level for me. And back then, I didn't have any kind of a personal connection to it. But today, that's how these things work. The YouTube channels work because of that personal connection. That's why you mentioned earlier the idea of a vlog sometimes getting 10 times the amount of views as like a crazy edit. It's because when you're competing for the next craziest edit and doing the next crazy trick, you're just entertaining someone. You're not connecting with them. And so it's that much harder to achieve those levels.
I just thought of a funny term for what it is. It's entertainment, because it's Dennis Anderson, so entertainment. But I mean, there is only if you really think about the grand scope of like transcendent edits, you can think of like a Dennis, a Chad and a Garrett,
Tate,
and then a Chris Kyle, but that's usually like a Red Bull perspective, like a Courage Adams thing, maybe Dan Lacey. Like you can name them with your hands, you know? But then when you think about like content creators that are doing things like, dude, I discover new BMX riders from around the world all the time that like have more subs than anybody now. It's like, it's pretty crazy. And they don't give a crap about no industry or what schmuck over here or that person over there is thinking about what they're making. Like that dude Ola BMX. I don't know why he stopped uploading, but some of his stuff was super sick, you know?
Yeah, I don't know why he did either.
I will say mental health. Like, I think when you get really into the grind and like you used to do like those 2-hour podcasts all the time or whatnot, those are draining. I know they are. You know, like I did my vlog 400 days in a row. And bro, by the end of it, I was losing my mind. I was getting subscribers up the wazoo and I was making good money. But like my personal life took a big hit and like I was wonky for a while.
Oh, dude. And I'm not please don't take this as one-upping. I'm just relating to you. Like, I uploaded daily for like years, like 4 and 5 years at this point. And I stopped last September, not this past one, but the one before that. And I uploaded like every other day for an entire year. And then after a year of doing that, I paid attention to what was going on with like my analytics and everything. Yeah. And I took a hard look at like myself and how I was feeling about like BMX and filming and all of this stuff. And I realized I was happier. I was not only happier, I was riding more and I was more successful with my YouTube channel when I was uploading every single day. And I realized that it is just a core part of who I am to make videos, because it always has been since I started riding. And so I started uploading every single day again, and YouTube's doing better. I'm making better videos and more of them because I realized through this whole thing that that what I was doing essentially by limiting my videos was I was limiting like what I was willing to make. And then, and because it had to be curated, it had to be like, well, if I'm only uploading 3 times a week, it has to be something I think is going to be good and not just like what I want to do as much.
I'll add one thing I mentioned was I was doing that while running the Come Up, OSS, the bike shop.
His reverse one-up. He just played the reverse Uno card.
My bad. What I meant was I was juggling a lot of things while editing, uploading, responding to all the comments, and I had a girlfriend. And so like I don't know if like obviously you as a content creator, you know what it's like to balance all that stuff, to be like, okay, cool, I'm gonna vlog, but then I gotta edit, but then I gotta hang out with my girl, and then I gotta do this. And like it does become overwhelming. I mean, some of it is like you put so much time, I mean, you know this, but so much time into effort into a video that you're like, this is going to be a home run, and it flops. Then you have another video that does so well for no reason. You filmed it on your iPhone. It was just like all those things coming back. And so when I started uploading, I was like, all right, I'm going to give myself a little challenge. Can I do 7 videos in a row?
Yep.
And like you, I started feeling like myself again. I was like, oh, I remember what this is like once you get into the flow state of like, oh, okay, I know I'm already filming, like I'm going to edit it. I'm already doing these things, but it's obviously different. Like you said, now there's so much more competition for eyeballs, all this other stuff. So it's never going to be the same, but it's still fun. And again, I do this because it's like an interesting challenge. Can I conceptualize a video? Can I make it perform well? Can I do the follow-up? How many days can I do? Can I break my old view records? You know, like little personal things. They're not so much like, I'm going to take viewership from that media brand.
Oh boy. Well, yeah. I laughed because the whole iPhone video that did better than whatever, that's part of me like deciding to upload every day again. That's part of that. And I think, you know, there is a lot of pressures that you can put on yourself with those things. And as long as you're making what you want to make and what makes you happy, then I feel like you're so much more happy in doing it. But that was exactly what happened, in that I was putting all of this time into editing the videos and trying to make them something. Essentially what I was doing was I was commercializing my videos by trying to edit them in a way that I thought would make anyone be able to watch them. And it was not what I should have been doing, and just making what I like and what I enjoyed doing. And I enjoyed making them the way I was, but I made a video one day that was just no music, no 60-second like recap with subtitles in the beginning, none of that. It was just raw, filmed from beginning to end with minimal editing, and it did better than anything I had put all this effort in the last like month. And I was like, okay, this just makes me
I guess sometimes I have like analysis paralysis because I'll think about so many different nuances when I think of a concept. But you do realize too that nowadays, because everybody has a DSLR or like a very nice iPhone or whatever, that content is so polished that it's actually going backwards. If you have more DIY type of content, it does perform better and it does feel more real and raw. So that connection aspect. And yeah, I do think that especially because you have all the reps in. You've probably made what? How many videos do you think you've made already?
Oh, dude, if I go to my channel right now, it'll tell you how many you've done.
I'm at 1,100.
4.7K videos.
That's insane. How many total views do you have?
Oh, geez. Let me pull that back up. So this is, we could dive deep into that stuff too. Total views is 49 million.
That's crazy.
So that is crazy. I'm almost at 50 million views. Let's go. That's
sick.
That's 5% of a billion. Anyways, yeah, the reps are there, all that stuff, but there's so much. We should do another podcast just about YouTube.
We should maybe do one where it's like bi-weekly or something, where you just link up and just talk about cool concepts. Not so much of this negative tinge on it, just more like, hey, this is what I'm working on. Because I do think that, look at Mr. Beast, you know, that he can pinpoint a success to doing this, having people that you talk to, giving away like knowledge, you kind of give it into the ecosystem and you get it back, right? Like by us talking, then in the comments, people will talk about it. They're like, you know what? Like, I really did like when Brant Up did this, or I really like when Alf did this, and it's like, oh, that's a good idea. Like those videos actually perform well. They were fun and I can go do one today. Like,
Dude, I'm so in. Like, I'm beyond the point. I have enough time where I can fully commit. Like, yeah, we could do this once every 2 weeks easily.
yeah. And I think people, that's the other thing. Content is so good when you really like it and you kind of become programmed, right? Where it's like, I know to expect every Friday, these guys are going to meet up, or every other Friday. And for an hour, I'm going to eat my snacks or drink my beer or whatever people do when they consume their favorite content. And it's like, oh man, like I might be a very casual BMX rider. I might not even ride BMX at all. I might be a skateboarder or something, but some of the ideas they talk about resonate with me and I might apply that to my job or to this hobby that I have or things like that. Because that's why early on, like we had success in like what we did was because we would take elements from like the big mainstream creators and we would apply them with a BMX perspective or angle.
Yep. I wholeheartedly believe that BMX needs BMX industry. We started this by all of that. I get it.
You interviewed Rick Haney too or no?
I did do one with him in the peak of all of that craziness.
I mean, look, it's always the same players if you think about it. They're always interjecting into everything as to like what BMX should be. But he has it right, man. Like F the industry, like do your own thing.
Yeah. So I have something in here. Maybe this should turn into another one in the future, but to talk about the come up, because I want to do exactly what I'm going to talk to you about. I want to do this with Adam too, because I've had this in my head. I believe this for years at this point, that the come up lifted up BMX and did more for BMX as an industry and a thing than more than any BMX media has even remotely since then.
Yeah.
And I can objectively talk about why. Like BMX media today is almost exclusively reposts and not actually creating anything unique or original content wise. And what it is today, let me read what I wrote here so I can make sure I get this right. Yeah. So today, I feel like the value that exists with BMX media is 100% perceived value versus objectively measurable value that the come up had in its peak. Like in the come ups era of it being the place to go, the YouTube channel and the podcast and all that stuff were creating so much original content with these people in BMX that it expanded the culture of BMX, and that therefore created the value that made it so prestigious and like valuable to a company to want to advertise there, to where we've all heard those dollar amounts from back in the heyday of it. Like you guys didn't just one day be like, yeah, this is just how much it costs to be on the come up. No, it's like you built the value that made the people want to be there enough that made it worth it to do that. Yeah. And that was not like, that wasn't an accident. Like that wasn't you reposting things enough times that made people, that brought that, like built the audience that made that value. Like that was done through building it and creating the original stuff, building the culture that it was, and making it happen. Does that make sense?
No, it totally resonates. When you look at the internet or media or things today, obviously it's such a curated, algorithmic, you don't even go to websites anymore, really. You just kind of stay on the platforms, right? So what Adam did early on with the blog aspect and like having his personal curation on things and being a tastemaker, it wasn't like a revolutionary idea on the internet, but it was for BMX.
Yeah.
And then eventually what we did with like, when I came on board, and it was more about like turning into more of a business model of like switching to the domain from the comeupbmx.com to the come up .com versus it used to be BMX net and all sorts of stuff. We started adding things from big media companies that we liked. So ESPN, this is like insider baseball too, but TMZ one time approached us. They wanted us to kind of partner with them to kind of like be the action sports hub of TMZ. That was like an interesting meeting that never really went somewhere, but at least it was like interesting to hear out.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, and this is like something about Adam, he was always just good at like being polarizing. And so he would beef with the Ride BMXs, the Vitals, like all the other old dormant things. And that's what I think in every industry or ecosystem, there needs to be somebody that's gonna like shift the status quo or like shake things up, right?
Yep. Stir the pot.
Correct. And some of it is like good timing. Some of it was just synergies. Like you said, it wasn't, standing on the shoulder of giants, right? Like it was things that we got to that level and then morphed. And then, like I told you earlier, like if you have a really good idea within BMX, it is like a good jumping board to the mainstream or to a different thing. And then that's case in point, no jumper.
Right. And so today it feels like companies work with BMX media more out of a feeling of necessity due to like a lack of options than it is them seeking out the value that these media entities bring to them. Whereas in the come up era, it was like, I want to be there because that's the place to be. And that's such a huge contrast. And people say whatever they want about Adam, whatever they want about the come up, and some of this, like, yes, is undeniable. Some of the stuff that, like, just in terms of like not drugs, but like weed and alcohol and stuff being prevalent there. Like, yeah, say whatever you want about that. But at the same time, that platform created a value that made companies want to be there versus, and this is totally my opinion, but it feels like companies do it out of a feeling of like, well, this is what I have to do because it's just the only option that exists. And I've had these conversations.
Well, Ronnie from Shadow and Sabrosa, like we've had these conversations for a long time that it's one of those things where the brands can also choose not to participate in that. If they don't believe they're getting the value of the X amount that they're spending a year, just reinvest it in your own. Like obviously it's easier said than done because we were a media company. So I do know the intricacies of how it works and whatnot, but I don't know why every brand doesn't have its own media company within itself where it's like, especially the bigger brands that have so many brands underneath their umbrella, like even Fit and S&M, if they had like, I mean, I guess they did with Charlie and Kareem, right? Where they had like kind of like that little space, but expound on that, like do like, do you remember Glenn P.B. Milligan's like big BMX show?
Yeah.
You can do that about your own stuff. Like,
oh, I do already.
Right. I'm not talking about you, but I'm talking about a brand. Like, and again, maybe that's why these podcasts could be very beneficial to other people in the future. But like, I look at their extensive catalog of content and I'd be like, all right, every Friday I'm going to post like crazy throwbacks from 10 years ago, from 5 years ago, from 15 years ago. I'm going to put the War Pig back out. I'm going to do a piece of content about that. I'm going to do Troy McMurray, like centerpiece on his riding then and like see what he's up to today. And all those things are like, yeah, they're not all going to be home runs and get 10,000 or 100,000 views, but it gets the right eyeballs.
Yeah.
And it gets people talking again. And excuse me, I think that them spending the $500 or whatever it is to pay an editor and a videographer to make that could be better than sending $500 to this brand that's going to be like, and on today's podcast, we're going to talk about this stem. Or
just reposts the videos that, should be being posted anyways.
Said people used to go in on us for doing just that. They're like, oh, look at that. We're journalists over here. We create content. We take these high-end photos and you guys just repost. Now it's like, oh, the tables have turned.
Yeah, man. And like, obviously it sounds like I'm coming at it, but I'm coming at it from a perspective of like, I am also BMX media and I see what's there and I see the access and I see the potential of these things and how it just doesn't happen. And I hear the frustrations from companies about this stuff. And so, like, once again, okay, how do we help this? Because I hate just bitching about something without offering some sort of alternative or solution to it. And there's opportunities for these BMX media companies to like work with bigger companies because of their bigger platforms and work with outside things. And like, yeah, I'm going to use a very specific example here, and I don't really care how this person feels about it, but like there's partnerships like Dale's, literally a beer partnership that reach outside audiences. And so instead of doing something badass and cool with that and like partnering up and working with this beer company to like expose their audience to BMX, no, we just sit on a podcast and drink beer and say thanks to Dale's. It's like, that's the kind of shallow thinking that gets us here in the first place. And what I was going to say to you about like your concept of throwbacks and posting all this stuff, and I feel like there has to be some involvement with the riders too in that. And all I hear about with those things is how the riders don't want to do it. They don't want to be on camera, or you can't get them to do these things. And that becomes a whole nother conversation of like, well, then why are these people your riders if they aren't willing to do what will help you, and all they want to do is go on the hunt for the next craziest trick when we already know that doesn't sell bike parts?
That goes back to the brand, right? Like I think and I don't even know if BMX brands have like directors of marketing or things
Not
like
anymore.
that. I think the parts guy is also the director of marketing. It's also the accountant. Like they're probably wearing many hats. So I'm not trying to diss anybody. But I do think that if someone sits down one day and it's like, all right, cool. What is a BMX team? All right, we got 6 pros, we got 5 AMs, and we got 4 flow guys. What if a company was like, all right, let's switch the paradigm. I got 2 vloggers, I got 2 TikTokers, I got 2 hardcore pros, and I got 2 contest guys. And I have the same budget, and I let them, we sit down and we talk about it, but I find ways that they can kind of like live in each other's worlds. And so the guy that doesn't necessarily like to be on camera and stuff like that just makes some appearances in somebody's vlog as an example. And they do the hardcore street tricks in somebody's vlog where they then explain like, oh, well, I don't know if you guys knew how hard it was that he did a switch hard 180 into a Smith to a half cab bar, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the TikToker person that makes content that might be more like how to do tricks or things like that includes somebody else from a different gamut or whatever. Like, again, that's a free idea that somebody can kind of expound on that. But what are these? These are ideas that we're talking about that are industry stuff that somebody could sit down and be like, why don't we have this? Why don't we have, and sure, there's only so many yous and so many Billy Perrys and there's so many people, but the brands that do get it, Rickson, right? They have launched something else. And Billy does a good job. Billy is a media empire, right?
Yeah.
So he's doing stuff with BMW, which is amazing and isn't celebrated enough. Like nobody talks about that. Again, that's why another reason why I wanted to like kickstart my channel again by doing the Salacious videos is I want to have an audience again that knows that to expect certain content sometimes where I do highlight things that I know that my friends are doing that nobody else in BMX is going to talk about because it doesn't benefit them. These media companies aren't getting $1 from BMW, and they're like, F Billy, like I'll interview him, but like, what's that going to do for me? Like, I want that BMW check or something.
That's the sad part about it, is that that's the perspective that it seems like exists when it should be the opposite of, and this is why the come up built the value that it had, is that the come up was not only, the tastemaker aspect that you're talking about with Adam, but it was also celebrating good stuff because it was good. And
that was a hard conversation, I will admit, because we did have really cool stuff that we celebrated that people didn't advertise. And on Monday, I would get the call from our big sponsors, some of the same people we're talking about that are now like running their own other stuff, that are like, well, we pay you this much and you gave them how much viewership for free? But it was like, well, in our media kit, we would have a thing that said like, you know, you get so many posts. But that doesn't mean that somebody else isn't going to get a post in between then. And if it's something cool, we're just going to post it anyways.
And what they have to understand, and what I feel like anyone who's thinking about this stuff has to understand, is that that's what builds the value in the first place. When you're posting and you're sharing things for what it is and not just because someone's paying you, you're building that platform based on value of like not only the taste making, that's the only word I can think of for it right now, but like not only for that, but also for the merit of things. And so now it's not this curated by money thing. It's this, all right, if the video is really good, we're going to have something really to say about it. And we're only going to put it up there with other stuff that is at that level. And by doing that for long enough, and Adam giving his real opinions on things, it built a value that made other people want their videos to be on it. Like back in that era, if your video wasn't on the come up, it meant it wasn't good enough.
Yep.
And when you build that, that's what creates the inherent value in it that makes it so you can go to that company and say, hey, look, this is how much it's going to cost, but this is what we're going to be able to give you for it.
Yeah. I think that also comes across like in your favorite creator. Like if you're watching a video of, let's say, Marquise Brownlee, and he usually does like a deep dive on really good product, right?
Yep.
But then there's a video that you know is 100% paid. There is something about that where you're like, is he giving me his genuine take on this, or is he, you know, kind of. But I think when a creator is good enough and they do have ample value that they give you, then you're like, I'm still going to watch it because I like this guy. And the other aspect I was thinking about is like Gary Vee always talks about that left hook, right jab. So where you give enough great value that when you do have the proposition of like, hey, buy this or go here, support that, you will, because you're getting so much value. And you're right. The curation aspect of like, at one point, the come up, we had 6 or 7 different bloggers around the world.
Yeah.
We had 3 different videographers. We had 2 photographers. We had a designer. We had all of these people that helped make the come up, you know? And because they were always remote, we didn't have to have salaried employees. It was just kind of like, well, I guess it was salary. Could we
or
paid
an office
dollar amount or an office? Yeah, those things. And these old antiquated systems that had a building where you had to work 9 to 5, they just couldn't compete with that, because then we would be working anytime we wanted. But that makes you work more. Like it's one of those old things, like you'll gladly work 100 hours for yourself to not work 40 hours for somebody else. It was that, you know?
Yeah. And this whole conversation, I feel like just is why BMX media is in the state it is right now, because that inherent value that is built through the methods that we've been talking about and the way that it was done, I just feel like isn't the same today. And I mean, you could deep dive into why that might be, but I just feel like that is it is what it is because of what it was kind of a thing. And it's just a classic example of building the value or not building the value. And that's why I called it like perceived value, or companies feeling like they have to go through them out of necessity. And what that ends up leading to is like, it really is a pay to play environment. And everybody else in BMX who doesn't know about it and they're not clued in on it doesn't realize that what they think BMX is in the mainstream of it is just a curated feed of stuff that's mostly paid for.
Right. And that's where like now the insider baseball that we know gives you that lens, and the people that are watching this podcast are going to be like, oh, I didn't think about it that way, you know? And look, I don't blame fully either the media or the BMX, because it is kind of like, I guess, a necessary evil at this point. But I do think that they tried a little harder. It's one of those things where you like, if you're investing in yourself, it's always going to pay the most dividend, right? But if you're kind of splitting between like, because I think that's what these brands are doing every year. They're looking at their budget, how much it's going to where and where and where, and what's giving the best results. But right now, it's kind of like, well, we have two options, and one of them is don't post at all or give the money and have them post it. But if you weigh it out, is it really like maybe it might even be cheaper sometimes to just do it yourself? Like
Yeah.
figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. And then by doing that, you're building your own platform so that you don't need something else. And with the tools,
But now more than ever, like you see the smallest accounts get crazy views.
yeah.
It's almost like they did flip the paradigm because now it's almost like the bigger accounts don't do as well because it's almost expected for these bigger accounts to boost and find
Mm.
other creative ways and collaborate more than for a small account to make a video that really resonates. But then they might not get the followers because like now followers are so hard to get because people are like, well, you're going to come on my feed anyways. I'm just going to see your content if it's good enough, right?
Yeah, we need to, it needs to be measured in a different way. And we need to figure out, I just don't know what that looks like.
So I've been on a lot of meta calls and like TikTok calls lately because they're trying to like snipe YouTubers to go to those platforms.
Mm.
And all of the platforms are adjusting that kind of stuff because if you even look at how Instagram displays your metrics, they're kind of highlighting your views to you internally more than they are your follower base.
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately, if you're getting the viewership you want and you're monetizing with apparel or with, brand deals or whatever, you show the brand deal that and they're like, oh, based on your views, here's the check that we're going to cut you for that.
Yeah. And with all of the tools like that are being built into these platforms, whether it be what you're talking about with all of the meta platforms or YouTube building memberships natively into being monetized, there's so many different avenues that a company could explore. And I made a video a week or two ago about the concept of like full-length videos aren't something that's profitable or even like.
Is this based on like the Rakist thing? Kind of.
It was inspired
got it. Yeah.
Somewhat by, but like I was trying to give a different spin on those kinds of things. But it's just that the membership platform could provide an alternative for a company to be able to make these videos that only members could watch as a subscription model that then could supplement the trip kind of a thing and make it so that it's easier to do the trip because you're making your money throughout the whole year rather than trying to rely only on selling it.
I think when I think about it, why it is that it's not prevalent, I think because if you have somebody that's on the staff that gets all these concepts, that person could just leave that company, start their own YouTube channel and start their own thing. And you're making six figures pretty quickly if you're smart enough, right?
Or go work for someone who
or sell,
can make it happen.
Like do what I do, consulting, like you can make.
Are you telling me I got to quit what I do and go into another industry so I can actually pay my bills?
I can show you some examples if you'd like to see what good, like information is worth to companies.
All right, guys, sorry, but we got to go. No, but genuinely though, like we have been talking for almost 2 hours, 40 minutes. So,
oh, wow. 3 hours. That's
yeah, it's insane. I didn't expect it to go this long, but
this is our first ever long conversation too. So
that's true. And the core of all of this, for anybody who makes it this far, I feel like you already understand this, but like, we're not having this conversation so that I can make money from YouTube or to do any kind of an agenda. It is purely out of the passion for me, one, seeing the response that people have to your video, and for you being the one passionate enough to make that video in the first place because you want to see things be better.
And I think if BMX truly drops dead, or like, let's say YouTube goes away or Instagram, I'm still going to go ride.
Yep.
You're still going to go ride. That's where it separates everything else. You can have an opinion on finance, on trends, on what brands are doing or whatever. But you're talking about something that you're passionate about because you obviously care, because you would like maybe your own kids, other kids, or people that have never been exposed to this to be exposed to it. And how do you do that? You talk about ways to like grow it.
Yeah, and it blows my mind when people act like you shouldn't talk about things, but also will admit that there's problems. And it's like, well, if there's problems, like, doesn't it make sense to want to solve those problems? And if we aren't allowed to talk about the problems, well, then they're just going to solve themselves. So, like, what are we supposed to do otherwise?
I mean, I think it's funny that, and this is no jab at anybody without a college degree or anything like that. It's not that I think I'm better than whatever. But when you go to school and you have more nuanced conversations and you're thinking about things from a lot of different perspectives versus people that dropped out and they've only been figuring things out like the hard way or whatnot versus reading, you do have a different kind of like approach to things, or just kind of like a not less nuanced, but sometimes it's like more gritty, let's just call
Mm-hmm.
it. And one of the best aspects of school is just the natural curiosity. Like all we've done right now is explore the curiosity of like, what if we did this? What if we did that? Where on the flip side, it feels like these people are kind of like bullies and they're like, nah, bro, this is the one way it's supposed to be. It's been this way since I started, and sure as hell going to keep it going this way. If you guys even start putting the idea out there that it could be dying or it could not be what we think it is, you're ruining it. And I'm like, sounds pretty dictatorial. Like you're telling me, maybe because you forgot to add the freestyle to your name, that this BMX is your BMX without the Y. And and it's one of those things where it's like, growing up, absolutely always hated that because I was a naive kid
Mm.
that thought that talent could get you far. But then I learned very quickly that it's not just talent. It is salesmanship. It is nepotism. It is all this stuff. I even threw that in my video, like a little nepotism chart, because it is real. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
not, let's be real. Who's getting into the X Games? You got an energy drink sponsor, you're probably going to go to the X Games, right? Like
Yeah.
whatever it was. Unless you're that good, that freaking good that you're going to transcend that. Well, guess what? That's 0.01% of the population.
Yep.
Right. But when you're putting up those gates, why are you really putting them up? Oh, you also receive a check from that brand. So it behooves you to stroke them and do this. And so like sometimes even in people's comments, when they like take a personal jab at you, it's basic psychology. It's like, oh, well, you're just projecting a lot of like insecurities or ineptitudes that you've had. And I can respond to you and we can go joust, or I can just ignore you and I
Mm-hmm.
can just make some sub tweets or whatever, some subtle jabs and.
And I think a big part of it within BMX is that the people who act this way have something to lose and feel threatened by the existence of an alternative possibility being out there, because that might take away from where they're at.
And that gives me a really good idea about something I mentioned in my video, but I guess I could highlight now. It's when the come up was doing its thing, it was so far ahead of everybody else. But there's a problem. When you're number one, you're constantly having to punch down to beat everybody else down because everyone's trying to come for your crown, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes it's nice being number two or number three so you can see what number one is doing and be like, all right, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. So, and not saying that what we're doing now is like up there. What I'm just getting at is like, when you are that old saying, like the first horse through the wall gets a bloody nose or something like that. When you break down a barrier, it is hard to do that initially. So,
Oh, and another thing I would add to that is that it's dangerous to throw stones in a glass house.
which is super funny because like you said, the more someone is protected of something, it's almost like an indicator of like, maybe the emperor isn't really wearing clothes. Like maybe there is something going on over there.
That's exactly why I built what I did, to not be reliant on the BMX industry. I'm not sitting here with my MooreBMX media relying on anyone paying for advertising, because I know that I want to be able to talk about whatever I want to, with whoever I want to, whenever I want to. And I never have to answer to somebody being like, hey, you can't do that because I pay you. And I don't think that's okay.
When I've when I hit upload today on the video and I knew it was going to come in, my brother and I were literally going to look at another car shop to like expand our business and whatnot. And like, he's like, you seem preoccupied. I was like, I'm just watching these comments come in or whatnot. And I got a flashback of like when we were doing all these other things, of when I would do something that I would have emails come in hours later about like deals that we had, or let's just say a person at that other media site really hated Adam. And so he got a big sponsor to drop us over a photo, over a freaking photo that we use in a deck, in a media deck. I texted that person and I was like, hey, bro, Adam didn't want to pay you for that, but I will. I will pay you so that we don't have this war. And he was like, if it's coming from your wallet, I don't want it. I want it to come from his. And because of that, we ended up losing like a $40,000 deal that year because of this, like, again, nepotistic, like hookup that dude has shot photos for that brand for so long. So he was like, come on, man, drop the budget. Like, don't spend it with them. And guess what? A few years later, they came right back because they were like, you know what? Value.
Oh, value is the key. And this all, like, the reason that this whole media conversation pisses me off so much is because there are so many people out there who have a misconception of what the reality of BMX media is, and what BMX even is because of that. And I can't help but think about it from the perspective of the free nights of the world who are working on these projects, like, that could potentially be like something awesome, but they can't afford to pay BMX media. And
but that's my whole, like, dude, maybe we start a separate whole thing where it's like we just do these seminars for these small brands that are not just BMX brands, any brand that's interested in how you can just do it yourself. It might take you 6 months of every weekend uploading a little video on your spare time.
Yeah.
But you do not need any of these people, especially now with the algorithms. Like, you might have to learn a little bit of Photoshop or even just using AI or whatever, but you don't need them. You don't need them. And I think that's the fear, because that's what we're doing, is like we're putting a flashlight on like basically shining the mirror of a light coming in and being like, see, this is what they're telling you need, but you don't really need that. You can just do it yourself.
One, I'm down. If you were talking about like you and I would love to do that because I've wanted to get into that consulting world in some way, but never just knew how to do it. Two, what pisses me off the most about it is that perception of feeling like they need it, like talking about a smaller brand needing this exposure from BMX media, and them not realizing that they're being gatekept by not being able to pay for the exposure. And then when a tiny little sliver of it does come in the form of a Instagram story repost or an Instagram hard post, which is like made out to be this insane huge thing when it's actually not, or being talked about for like a couple minutes in a multi-hour long thing, they're on there like with so much gratitude, literally saying, thank you for gatekeeping me so much that when you do give me a little sliver, I am ecstatically grateful to you for it.
Yeah.
And that thought right there just infuriates me, because there's no value from celebrating cool stuff, or no real inherent value to these things. It's just a perceived value out of necessity.
Yep. You nailed it with that. And call it perceived BMX. Start a whole little media empire where, bro, I'm not even kidding. Like, the amount of viewership you have, the amount of knowledge you have, just curated to like small niche brands and just being like, hey, alternative media, within a year, you could probably build like a 6-figure business. Like,
well,
again, this is because like I do have the insider. I've built a lot of businesses that have made significant income. And so like, yeah, of course I make it sound easier than it is, but like, what are your alternatives? Like, continuing to just allow the status quo, or trying something. And if you fail, you can kind of fail upward because that might pivot into something else. You might not sell that information to BMX brands, but you might end up selling it to a hockey brand. You never know.
Yeah.
Sorry, one second.
No, you're good. And you're absolutely,
My
kitty cat. Last podcast I did, we had a dog appearance. This time we have a cat appearance.
She's a Bengal from Siberia.
Oh, dude, have you ever seen the like gray ones?
They're the best.
Oh man,
I originally
crazy.
I wanted a gray one, but I ended up here with Luna, and I love her nonetheless. But yeah, they're super sick. And like my friend has a cat just like her, but his has green eyes, and mine has like cool yellowish ones. Like it's pretty awesome.
Whoa. So yeah, you're right. You're talking about like the alternative, and I would love I want to talk to you more about this stuff, like
we'll
to where we're not doing boring people with it in a podcast. But I would love to get to that place, and that's but what you were saying is why I talk about it, because I don't know like what else to do but to try and inform people so they do understand.
We'll break it down simply. What is business? Business is a solution to a problem, right?
Yeah.
And there's a big problem right there in front of you. If for the last few years, 5 years, 4 years, whatever, since OSS and the come up kind of went away, what has been missing? A voice, right? An actual voice, not a gate kept paid voice, whatever, you know?
Yep. Oh, he's black.
Oh, wait. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I just can't see you.
Let me just switch a battery. I forgot. I haven't been streaming for a while, so I had the regular plug battery. I have to do like the new you know what I mean? It's a cable that you plug into your DSLR.
Oh, that's okay. Maybe that's a sign.
Hold on. I just saw batteries.
Oh, okay.
It probably is a sign as well, but
yeah. Let's take that as a sign, and we can talk about this exact thing. But I feel like we've accomplished what the goal was of this podcast.
Are you going to release 1 3-hour thing?
Oh, yeah.
Are you going to edit it, or?
I wish I had the time. I just don't have the time to edit something like this. But
I don't think anything has been on here that I would want omitted or that you probably want. So I could just go in raw. I don't mind.
I think it was good. I think we accomplished the goal of like, okay, you talked about this problem and you talked about your perspective of it. And then I came in to ask the question of like, okay, I acknowledge your problem. You make good points, but now what can we do about it? And I think we've went like as deep as you can go without making it crazy.
Yeah, true.
So with that being said, this has been our first real long form conversation. I'm stoked that it went as well as it did, and I think we should do more.
I'm super down with that. Also, like I said, I wanted to give you your flowers. I think what you're doing is awesome. Obviously, like I can't consume as much content as I once did, but like when I do check in, like it's cool. And I think even during the pandemic, I would see some of your stuff and I would kind of like, whenever I had time, go in there and like drop some comments or whatever. So don't stop what you're doing. Fight the good fight, you know?
That's every day, man. And thank you for that. And I get it. You know, when someone uploads every single day, it's not possible to watch all of it.
There was just like a point where I was just like doing so many other things and just kind of a little jaded with BMX because of like how some certain things went down or whatnot. And so I would see it and I would be like, all right, I'll watch a little bit. But once I got too inundated, I was like, oh, it's just BMX overload. I'd rather just go ride and not think about this other stuff. Yeah,
that's fair. So everybody, Alfredo's video and channel, they're going to be linked below. Go watch it. Hopefully everybody could get something productive out of this and not just hate us both. I don't care either way.
Yeah, I'm sure your comments are going to be spicy and I'm sure some of the haters will be here, but it is what it is. Like, you've built what you've built. You're doing your thing. I do my thing. So, you know, let's boogie.
Welcome to the playground, bitches.
That's right.
Either way, thank you for the time. And
thank you, man. It's been awesome.
I look forward to the next one.
Yep.
Good night, everyone.
Later, guys.